Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, it's a kind of a good sign when all of a sudden your team wins and all kinds of this is the X since Y situations. Like this is the first time ASU's been ranked since 2021, or in this case, this is the first time ASU's been in the playoff poll since almost a decade.
And depending on what happens this weekend, we could be inching closer toward the first time ASU is in deep, legitimate conference championship contention in the last decade or more. It's obviously been nearly 30 years since ASU won a conference championship, but getting far ahead of ourselves with that statement, let's take a quick step back to acknowledge, my goodness, this program quite on fire after a resounding win at Kansas State, a game that Brad and I just both legitimately thought was going to be too tough of an out for ASU to survive. They looked incredible, especially in the first half, and closed out what was looking like a furious comeback to hold on to that victory. And here ASU is in mid-November, the game before the final game of the season in the national rankings, in that conversation for the conference title, in that conversation for a college football playoff position. These are inconceivable notions as recently as August of this year to anybody, maybe outside Kenny Dillingham. But here we are, ASU at 8-2. You can't say enough incredible things about what Dillingham and staff are doing with this program, and it could get even better.
A lot is still ahead for the Sun Devils, and we'll dive into all of that because this is an exciting time for Sun Devil football. And yeah, just kind of, I don't know. The last Saturday was one of those times, and there's been a few this year where ASU things have maybe not gone their way in the course of a game, and same old Sun Devils, that kind of stuff was thrown out there. And no, it's not the same old Sun Devils at all. This is a team that is 8-2, shown great resiliency as we talked about, and perhaps just their most impressive feat yet this past Saturday, as we'll dive into in a moment. But we're not going to do it alone. We are loaded on this show. We're going to be talking to linebacker Jordan Crook and running back Kyson Brown, a couple of key Sun Devils young players that are foundational pieces for this season and the years ahead. We're going to be talking to new commit Tristan Bacon, a local guy out playing ball out in Glendale, a very intriguing linebacker prospect. And hey, to top it all off, let's talk a little hoops because the Bobby Hurley's Devils are 4-1. We're going to be talking at the end of the show with Kyle Dodd.
So we have got a stacked and loaded episode for y'all this evening, and we know that you're jonesing for yet another Sun Devil victory, especially this week against BYU. You should also be equally jonesing for a new vehicle, and if you're doing that, then your first and only call needs to be to Jones Auto Group. Jones has been servicing the state of Arizona and the Sun Devil community for more than 50 years with multiple locations across the state, and it is a fact. Jones Auto Group was the original provider of vehicles to Sun Devil student athletes for NIL purposes, and it is your support that enables them to continue to do that year after year. In addition to their unwavering support of Sun Devil athletics, Jones Auto Group offers unique tax advantages due to their dealership locations that have the potential to save you some big-time money. That's something that you got to keep in mind if you're shopping for a new vehicle. So if you ask me, it doesn't get much better than that when you are looking for a new ride. Working with a fellow Sun Devil who will treat you like family and potentially set you up for some big-time savings, that's a win in my book. So to get there, here's what you do. Contact Parker Jones, not just the owner and GM, but a third-generation Arizona State alum, and just like you, a diehard Sun Devil fan. Take down his cell number. Shoot him a text. Give him a call. He wants to hear from you. He wants to help you out. 602-881-8998. Again, that's for the owner of the dealership. Where else can you get that? 602-881-8998 for Parker Jones. You can browse their inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles at jonesautocenters.com. Jones Auto Group, Arizona's best since 1970.
All right, so let's dive into some news. And first and foremost, for the first time in years, the Sun Devils have a little number in front of their name. Devils checking in at number 21 in both the AP poll and perhaps most crucially, the college football playoff poll. It's an exciting time because, I mean, I honestly, I forget who tweeted it. My apologies, but it was one of the best things I saw. It was like updated Big 12 standings. It was just basically the preseason graphic just flipped.
Yeah. And another great tweet by our wonderful great friend Jedi ASU is how it began, how it's going. Because
I haven't seen this one.
Oh, do you know who the preseason number 21 team in the country was?
Oh God, was it U of A?
It was the University of Arizona. So those are the things that you'd love to see.
Yeah, so it's a pretty interesting time, and I know that that's a thing we touched on. ASU fans, there's a segment of ASU fans have been afraid of success, and a lot of fans, ASU is ranked, and all that means disaster is looming. But I think, as we touched on, these aren't these same old Devils. Now, BYU is a very quality team. They're 14th in their own right. So, as we'll get to a little bit later on as we preview the game, no guarantee of success. But, I mean, I don't think that, if ASU does drop a game being ranked, that it's like an end of the world or kind of the continuation of a Sun Devil curse, because this is, I think, as we've seen develop through these first 10 games, this is a different breed of Sun Devil football.
And thankfully, I think that I've seen very limited reactions that are of that old mindset of ASU fans somehow wanting ASU to win every single game, but never, ever, ever be ranked until you win a national championship or some weird thing like they just
12-0 also receiving votes.
Yeah, exactly, like something like that. I think that that's kind of faded away, and I think that if that is the case, that's probably a lot of the fans just buying into the culture, buying into the coaches, buying into Kenny Dillingham, buying into Graham Rossini, buying into Sun Devil football, and having faith and trust that you may not see these things that we've seen in the past of. You go up and lose to a bad Oregon State team like 5 years ago and come back and beat Oregon, a top 10 team. Like that thing that used to happen a lot to where you just couldn't really figure the program out. It was just chaotic all over the map. So maybe that's the case. Maybe it's ASU fans allowing themselves to have nice things, which is not a terrible way to go about your life. However you cut it up, however you get to the end result there, fans are embracing it as they should. At least it seems. We'll see how long that lasts because, depending on the outcome of this week's game, you could have a continued stay in the national rankings or it could maybe be a brief one, depending on how things go. But all in all, get on board with the success. It's just an incredible thing to see. Obviously, ASU very, very well deserving of that national ranking. I know a lot of folks were throwing out projections and predictions and things like that. And I think that spot is pretty fair. I'm not really crunching those numbers too deep, but that's a solid spot for them to be in, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah, a wise man once said, winning is good. And with winning comes being ranked.
There you go.
All right, so one quick note. The Territorial Cup kickoff, of course, the most important game on any given year. Well, we still don't know when the hell it's going to kick off because the dreaded 6-day selection as of this recording. We won't know until presumably next Sunday when the latest edition of the Territorial Cup battle will take place.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of games that are still up in the air, and that's largely predicated because of how murky the conference title picture is and how that obviously will be cleaned up after this weekend. So I think the powers that be that make these decisions kind of wanted to see who's going to still be in contention before making those selections. At least that's kind of what I gather. I know Doug Tamaro from ASU kind of explained that a little bit socially as well. But yeah, it does kind of stink because even though the game's not in Tempe, and I'm among those handful, maybe many people who just choose to stay home when games of sports are being played in Tucson, Arizona. You still want to know, your plans for the weekend and just want to have that part figured out.
Yeah, so we'll see when that is. Could be a wide variety of stuff, but obviously an important game is that Sun Devils have a lot riding potentially on that. But what we do know is that no team in the conference is good at getting Big 12 Player of the Week awards. And the Devils, let's talk about a couple of them. Jordan Tyson, coming off his career game, setting new career highs in catches and yards, along with a couple of touchdowns. Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week. And then Sam Levitt going back-to-back and third overall as the Big 12 Newcomer of the Week.
Yeah, I mean, ASU has claimed a lot of those awards on a weekly basis pretty consistently. That's what happens when you are a team that here at this spot after 10 games, you're nationally ranked. I don't believe any player in the conference has had as many of those awards as Cam Scadaboo has had or as has Sam Levitt for the Newcomer. I don't know if that has a major bearing on, the conference offensive player of the year and newcomer of the year, but at least that trends in a positive direction there. So you think, if I'm not mistaken, because I've looked quite a bit at like last year's all conference lists and honorees and things like that for the Big 12, they do a lot of awards that they give out, I think, on an annual basis. So what I'm saying is some ASU players should, or at least could possibly be in line for some postseason hardware from the conference as things are trending.
Yeah, so overall, as Joe mentioned, with Scat getting the Offensive Player of the Week 4 times, Caleb McCullough has a Defensive Player of the Week on his resume, Martell Hughes with the Special Teams Player of the Week for last week, and then the awards this week. That brings ASU's total to 10 through 12 weeks. That's 10 of 48 total, as they have 4 awards over those 12 weeks. Joe, do you know who's second? So you had to venture a guess in terms of just
like
overall.
A team?
Who has like the most collective Player of the Week awards?
I'll say Colorado.
You're right. 7.
That makes sense because they've got some players that are very good.
Yes.
Also ones that are, popular and known commodities, so they might get a little extra love or extra attention because they are that known commodity.
Yeah, so overall, ASU continues to rake in the individual awards, but as Kenny Dillingham said, really that is at its core a reflection of the team success because if you're 2-8, not 8-2, you're not having this level of individual recognition.
I think ASU knows that very well from the last couple seasons of football that it played. Now, before we dive in and take a deep look at that victory over Kansas State, you got to be a member of DevilsDigest.com. It's your weekly PSA about that very topic. You can get as much information as you would ever want about Sun Devil athletics. Obviously, this time of year, you got football and basketball going on. A lot of coverage there, practice reports, great deal of game previews, recaps, just every step of the way. You will get some incredible coverage at DevilsDigest.com, pardon me. And with a subscription to Devil's Digest, that also gets you access across the Rivals Network to premium content. You can read up about other teams, read recruiting reports across the country. You can spend a lot of time on that website, believe you me. But you got to be a subscriber to get there. And things are only going to ramp up. Even though the football season's kind of winding down, though, there could be some major fireworks up ahead for ASU, depending on how things shake out. Basketball just getting into full swing, as I mentioned. Recruiting is really going to ramp up. The transfer portal, you don't want to miss a second of the news. And to make sure you're on top of it all, easy fix. Become a subscriber to DevilsDigest.com.
All right, Joe, let's talk about it. In my book, the statement win of the Kenny Dillingham era. He mentioned that in the pregame team meal, usually it's a jovial affair. The team camaraderie is good. The culture is healthy, and so usually there, a lot of folks cracking jokes, some music going on. But before facing Kansas State, he said it was very silent, and he kind of turned to his staff and said, "This is either going really good or really bad." Didn't take too long to find out that Saturday night was a really good one for the Devils, as they really jumped out on top of number, I believe at the time, 16 Kansas State, run it up, to a 3-touchdown lead. Some tense moments overall in the back half of the second half, but not the same old Devils. There wasn't, that collapse that's, some fans feared, and, this is just a new, that you continue to say, it's like they check boxes week after week, and, getting the big road win at Oklahoma State, okay, that's great. It's a big, conference road win, but Oklahoma State's god-awful. This is was a quality team that ASU handled for the better part of the entire game. And, walking out of Manhattan, Victor's 24-14, damn, that was impressive.
If you ask me, and I don't think this is a far stretch, the biggest win for Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State. Last year you had only the 3 wins. Utah was important this year, but it certainly wasn't quite the same Utah team, that we're used to be able to go on the road in a very tough atmosphere in Manhattan and do that work. Very, very impressive. It got off to obviously an immediate start, forcing the turnover, turning that into a touchdown in short order. We saw by far, it was kind of interesting. It's very much an all's well that ends well affair, and by no means am I trying to complain about anything that happened with this game. I do think that you may have had the best and the worst halves, perhaps, that ASU has played. I think the first half was the best half of football that ASU's played this year, and the second half, it kind of depends. It's around there, So, but the thing is, they mitigated the damage, didn't let it add up, had some very clutch plays and some fortuitous outcomes. A missed field goal, you had the interception to limit the damage down there at the end. It got a little dicey, and it's funny because, while I don't necessarily embrace the fan mentality of, hey, never rank ASU, the stuff that we talked about, earlier, I definitely can get like the battered fan syndrome of like ASU's up 24-0, and I feel like this is a 0-0 game. because that was kind of how I felt about it. I think that is a habit that definitely dies hard.
Yeah, and even I even tweeted at a half. They had the 21-0 lead at the break. They were getting the ball, and I tweeted something like, veteran, like, because Jonathan Poppy, he's a must follow on for Sun Devil Twitter, made mention of, it's kind of, that alluded to the battered fan syndrome. And I was like, yeah, like ASU's up 3 touchdowns, but this is almost like a must score drive for the Devils, because you just know that, Kansas State's a good team, and that you don't want that first domino of the momentum of a comeback to fall on ASU. You went down there, got a field goal. That's the last score of the game, and there were some white knuckle moments. But ultimately, what they did in that first half, and then at times and key junctures in that second half, ultimately were enough.
Yeah, for sure. And then you talked about that first score of the second half. My goodness, I mean, I don't think, other than like game-winning field goals, I don't know if I've been that fired up for ASU making a field goal in recent memory. The 47-yarder by Parker Lewis, that, my gosh, that could have been good from mid-50s, and people were jacked up about it.
So here's a quick quiz. That was the first Sun Devil made field goal since? It's an embarrassingly long time.
Would that have been? I can't even tell you. I don't even know if
Texas Tech in late September,
gotcha.
September 21st.
That was going to be. I was going to go to that was the first conference game, so I was going to go to like around that time. I literally could not even remember. My goodness. So
Has ever been a 2-month span of no made field goals?
That's research I don't know that I want to do. But to see that again from Parker Lewis, that's outstanding, and seems like he's probably going to be the guy from this point forward. If you can get that, I mean, at this point, I think we're just being kind of reasonable. It's like, hey, just be accurate from like inside 40. I mean, 47 is outstanding, but just being accurate from inside there. But all in all, I mean, just such an outstanding game. Sam Leavitt just continuing to mature, continuing to advance. 275 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I mean, I mentioned it last week. He's grown up before our very eyes, but the difference in, especially like those non-conference games, those first couple games, from then to now is remarkable. It's not that he was playing poorly. Obviously, ASU was winning those games, but it was a lot of Cam Scadaboo and Sam Leavitt, making some plays here and there. We are seeing Leavitt develop into an extremely talented quarterback that, I mean, just keeps getting better and better every week.
I mean, the Plummer comparisons continue to grow every week. Just the clutch nature and just the cool, calm efficiency that he's put forth out there. Again, just multiple touchdowns, no turnovers, making plays with his legs, an appropriate 42 yards rushing on the night for him as well. Overall, the offensive line, I thought maybe struggled against a very good Kansas State run game. Scadaboo had 75 yards rushing, kind of a workmanlike effort, not a whole lot of explosive plays from him. But yeah, it was just really the Leavitt to Jordan Tyson show. Maybe it is the modern day Plummer to Poole. That connection, Leavitt targeted Tyson 17 times, connecting 12 for 176 yards. As mentioned earlier, those are both the Jordan Tyson career highs. 2 touchdowns on the game. Jordan Tyson has 8 touchdowns in conference play amongst any conference in the country. That's the most that a player has, and against his own respective conference. Tyson has 27 catches, 356 yards, and 5 touchdowns over the last 3 games.
And he does that. He does things in bunches. You look at his numbers from when he was at Colorado a couple years ago, and one of the games, it may have been the one that really ignited it. He had a few game stretch. What I just talking about was when he played with Colorado against ASU and had a monster game in a Sun Devil win. He had a streak of games, I believe he was over 100 plus and multiple touchdowns in every single, across those games. So he has the ability, as we have seen, to really, really just, be a major focal point. He's every bit of that number one wide receiver that ASU needed him to be, especially with the offseason departure of Elijah Badger. You're looking through the numbers, Cam Scadaboo, didn't have a scat-like day on the ground, but Kansas State had an incredible rush defense, but he still had 117 all-purpose yards. Very, very good outing there. As far as some of the team numbers, one that I think was a huge factor, and ASU on many occasions has been on the other end of this, but the third down conversions, 9 out of 15. If my Arizona State University math is correct, that's a 60% conversion rate. That is very good on those situations. So it got to the point where it almost felt like a comfort zone of it's third down, but I'm not really feeling too bad about it because they are converting a lot of these. And that just obviously is demoralizing for an opposing team and just helps add more fuel, more confidence to the offense. And you saw that pay off for them.
Yeah, and it's a great complimentary football in that first half as well. The defense was getting all over the Wildcats. And I hope maybe that's a foreshadowing of a performance against another Wildcat team a little bit later on in this month. But in that first half, held them to just over 100 yards total offense, generating 2 turnovers and also a pair of turnovers on downs. And so when you have those first couple of touchdowns, I believe we're off short fields. So that makes things a lot easier for Levitt, Tyson, Scott, and company. And that's winning football. That's what good quality teams do. That's not what the Sun Devil teams have in recent years have done. But again, this team seems to be cut from a different cloth. And having that ability to play that complementary football. You mentioned Parker Lewis making field goals or making a long field goal, while Kansas State, their snapper had 2 costly misfires on field goal attempts. Just everything was working right for the Sun Devils, kind of until that second half defensively when the K-State run game got going a little bit. DJ Giddens gashed them repeatedly for some big gains, over 300 total yards of offense for Kansas State in that second half. But the team limited the damage, made the stops when it counted. And when you hold the number 16 team in the country to just 14 points at home, you're doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny how football works sometimes, that just a single play can really change, the composure of a ball game. Obviously Jordan Tyson had a monster game, and he's doing incredible, but he did have that fumble, and that is, not the first time that's happened this season. And you figure
tight.
If ASU got points on that drive, and they were certainly, making their way downfield, I feel like it would have been a blowout victory. I don't think that Kansas State really, bounces back from that, but that turnover gave them some life and allowed the game to become interesting down the stretch. But again, ASU, just between its own work and just some fortunate bounces, was able to prevent further, significant damage from being done, catastrophic game-tied turning damage from being done when Kansas State got into the red zone, with the field goal situation and the interception down there at the end. So, again, you can't be too nitpicky about a game like this, especially when the season is waning down. You're not talking about, what's going to happen down the road later in the season, when if these trends continue, you take the wins when you can get them, especially when it, again, is such a milestone hallmark win for Kenny Dillingham and this program. And it could very well be a significant launching pad to something very special this season. I mean, the season is already effectively, conclusively incredibly special. I know that I've been nerding it up quite a bit with, some of these breakdowns of win improvements on a historical scale, but the facts are what they are. ASU football began in 1897. There have been a small handful of occasions, I believe 5, including this year, where year over year, Sun Devil team has improved its win total by 5 wins. That's what ASU's done. They had 3 last year. They've got 8 right now. Never once in the history of Sun Devil football, again, began in 1897. Never once has ASU improved its win total by 6 or more from one year to the next. So if ASU goes out and wins just one more game, whether that's this weekend, whether that's against Arizona or beyond, then you're talking about unprecedented feats. You're talking about Kenny Dillingham, his staff, and his players doing something that has never happened here. And not only that, but they do that coming out of the shadow of what may very well be just the most ridiculous, time-consuming, maddening NCAA situation that ASU encountered from 2020 to 2023, which I think adds some gravity to the achievement as well. So realistically, we could already be talking about, and certainly with just one more win, talking about this being the greatest coaching performance and coaching effort in the history of Sun Devil football. I'd confidently say that with just one more win, because the numbers will take away any sort of objections to it. But right now, I think you can also say that as well. So just adding more layers to the thought process and just trying to hope that folks see the forest for the trees here and understand that what's going on right now. I know that obviously a lot of ASU teams have won 8 games. They've won 9 games, even 10. We've seen that, in the last decade or so. But to do that under the circumstances, and especially what happened the few years leading up to this season, I mean, it is just, like I said, it is unprecedented stuff, incredibly special, and I hope that fans everywhere that follow Sun Devil athletics honor it as such.
Well, yeah, obviously when we're getting into some pretty heady terrain, and there's at least 3 more games for the Sun Devils to continue to etch their mark in the history books. And you talk about just kind of the turnaround, and Kenny even talked about it after the game, and just like, we're coming off back-to-back 3-win seasons and NCAA sanctions, and you look, and like coaches who are hired in sanctions, they get fired. Like it never ends well. And so to see the coming out of what has happened in the ashes of the Herm era to where the Devils are now on this trajectory, and this, whether that ends in Arlington and beyond, we'll find out. The old Bruce Snyder was it one at a time, just one. But so regardless, this is already a sensationally successful season. Even putting aside just kind of the ridiculousness of the 16th place media poll, even us close to the program, thought there would be improvement, but not this level of improvement. So pretty fun times as well. Also, I think it would be remiss if we didn't shout out Shamari Simmons. Yep. Had the game-sealing kind of interception there in the final seconds, but also the pass breakup that Xavier Alford was able to intercept on the Kansas State's second play. Also forced a fumble that was recovered by the defense. We have a conversation with him after this practice. You can find it on the Speak of the Devils YouTube channel as well. But just every piece just seems to be working for the Devils right now. And as mentioned, pretty fun time to be following this team, and still a lot more quality football up ahead. So before we talk to a couple of these key Sun Devils that have been interesting parts of this resurgent season, also a future Sun Devil as well, talk to you a little bit about HomeField apparel and all the great stuff that they have there with the ASU connection. They actually just dropped a brand new hat over the weekend, surprise drop, part of the 60 new hats that just dropped on the website. But of course, if you're not familiar with HomeField apparel, get out from under the rock that you've been under. This is the premium vintage collegiate apparel company in the country. An amazing ASU collection of now well over 30 different pieces. Over 200 total schools, perfect for the holiday shopping season as well. New campus classic pullovers that they just dropped recently as well. Best of all, you can get 15% off your first order with offer code SUN24, that's SUN24, at checkout at homefieldapparel.com. Weather's getting a little chilly. I've been rocking HomeField hoodies on a daily basis. You won't find a better blend of style, vintage look, and comfort than your stuff from homefieldapparel.com. All right, let's talk to a couple of those Sun Devils, starting with linebacker Jordan Crook, who you talked about off the top, Joe. Parker Jones taking care of the Sun Devil players, and Jordan Crook, he put out into the world. He was having some problems with his Ultima that he's had for a while. But thankfully, Parker Jones is able to come to the rescue there on that front, and it's something that he'll talk about here, as well as the stout play of the defense and looking ahead to BYU. So you guys have another big win on the road, now ranked in the polls. I mean, what is that? Kenny talked about how this past week's maybe the first time you guys looked to acknowledge kind of the external stuff and the media attention. What does it mean just to maybe get the national recognition of being in that top 25?
It's cool, but at the end of the day, we just getting started. I feel like this ultimately this not where we want to be. We're working for some sort, something way bigger. This is just a start, but great start. It's a cool ranking. Nice to look at, but we just head down. We keep on working.
What are the kind of the keys in shutting down that Kansas State offense for pretty much the most of the game there?
We knew we were just gonna have to be more physical, win our one-on-ones. I think that was the biggest thing. We knew it was gonna come down to just winning our one-on-ones individually, being more sound, and being a smarter team, and ultimately just being out physical. And then we knew if we came in, we'd be able to stop the run. We had a pretty good chance of winning.
So what do you think, this team, the Sun Devil team, said to the nation at large about going on the win, taking down the top 20 team on the road?
I think it just showed that we hungry. Like a lot of people been counting us out, still counting us out. So we just, like I said, just coming up here working every day, putting in the work at practice every day, and then ultimately going out there having fun with each other on on the weekends, and it's just paying off.
So obviously, off the field, some good news on the automotive front. What's it like just seeing, the Sun Devil Nation, did the Valley get activated and help you with the new ride?
Man, first I want to say thank you to all the Sun Devil fans. Like, they did help me, put in for that cause. I think that was pretty big. That meant a lot to me. I really just want to say I appreciate it. It definitely means a lot. Just to feel that love, coming from all the Sun Devil fans around here, just to really be able to have those people behind us, and it means a lot to me.
So looking ahead to this weekend, as one of the guys who the younger guys on the team, what does it mean to maybe try to send these outgoing seniors out on a good note?
Oh yeah, no doubt. Like when you get to stuff like this, like games like this, like senior nights, and stuff like that, where people might not be here again and things like that. I definitely. Me personally, I take that serious. I know everybody around me who's younger too, I'm gonna also take that serious. We want to send those guys out the right way. I'm gonna uphold everybody that's the younger guys to go out here. Let's do it for the older guys.
So obviously it's a formidable test, and another top 20 team BYU, and what are the things that kind of jump out to you about this Cougar offense?
They play hard, very well coached. I think those are the two biggest things I can say. They play very hard. Got a solid run game. Got some big guys up front, and they're well coached. I think just watching it so far, those are two things I can point out right now. Just the naked eye.
So looking ahead, also, not to get too far ahead, one game at a time mentality, but obviously you guys, pretty much in the driver's seat of your own destiny to get back to Dallas and Texas and, play for something pretty big. Is that on the players' mind, or how much is that on the players' minds right now, knowing that you guys are?
Just to be honest with you, I think it's in the back of everybody's mind, but ultimately everybody know we got to complete this week. We just take it ultimately really. We're not looking too far ahead. I wouldn't even say we just looking at Saturday right now. We just kind of come out here, have the best Tuesday we can have. Then have the best Wednesday, and then have the best Thursday, and so on. And I think Saturday will take care of itself.
So what does it mean to you guys? Get some national recognition and appear in the top 25 for the first time in a few years.
I guess it shows that the work that we put in. I mean, we're better than what people think we are, and we came a long way from what we were, but we still got a lot to accomplish.
How much is it on the players' minds, maybe, that you guys are just in control of your destiny to perhaps get back to Texas and play for a conference title?
Yeah, I mean, we really get to be wherever we want to be right now. I mean, it's in our hands. I mean, we get to change the narrative, where they thought we would be, and then we get to do something special that's never really been done here. So it's a good feeling to be a part of that, and a good feeling to have been a part of something special, a special team.
Kenny and some of the guys after the game talked about how this is kind of maybe the first week that you guys kind of maybe allowed, paying attention to external expectations, some of the media stuff that was being said. How much of a motivating factor was that, do you think, ultimately in the performance against Kansas State?
I think it's motivating to know that it means nothing really. All that motivation and all the the people that's trying to give us gratification or showing that they see us now, it means nothing because they weren't there at first and they weren't there in the beginning. So it's just really something that we want to push back against this week.
You're coming from Texas. How much would it mean to be able to play a Big 12 championship game like that?
Oh yeah, that'd be big. My whole family would be there in attendance at the AT&T Stadium, right? Yeah, that'd be big. In high school, you play there when you go to the playoffs and stuff. So I never got the experience there, or play that big game. So it'll be a great opportunity to play there.
What would it mean for this group to finish the season undefeated at home this year? It would be the first time in 20 years that an ASU team has done that. Have you guys put much thought into that? What would that mean for the team?
I mean, I haven't put much thought into it, but I mean, I know, we have a tough crowd. We got a tough, student section, and when they show out, they show out. So I mean, it's gonna be special. It's gonna be good for the fans, to be able to experience that. And it's gonna be good for us, to be able to do something, that many teams not able to do.
It's one of the younger guys. What is there any extra added motivation to maybe send the seniors and the guys playing their last game in Mountain America Stadium out on a good note?
Yeah, we got to send them out right. There's a lot of guys that I'm gonna miss, especially my dog's cat. So it's gonna be a special night for them, and we got to send them out the right way.
Speaking of Scott, were some things just working with him all year long, the last couple of years, really, that you really kind of maybe incorporated in your game, or lessons that you've learned that helped elevate yours?
Yeah, it's been mainly off the field. I ain't gonna lie, that's my brother. I can talk to him about anything, and I feel like that relationship is carried onto the field, but it's really just us making that bond off the field. Is, just allowed me to just gravitate towards him more and just learn more from him as much as I can. That guy's gonna play on Sunday, so that's where I hope to be one day. So just learning everything I can, taking everything I can from him, implementing it into my game, and hopefully it make me a better player.
Have you kind of wrapped your head around the idea of, like, a year ago, you guys went 3-9, the self-imposed bowl ban wasn't really a possibility to make the postseason. Now you guys are competing for the conference championship. Have you wrapped your head around just kind of the turnaround and the tradition in a year?
Yeah, it's been a crazy turnaround, but wrapping my head around it wasn't hard because we knew, coming into the season how hard we worked. I felt like that's probably the hardest I ever worked in my life, and I felt like I was getting the same thing from the rest of the guys, and we knew that eventually we was gonna reap the benefits of what we put in. Just every day coming to work and every day making ourselves better, every day competing, and I feel like we've been able to see the benefits of us working hard and us bringing it to each other every day. So.
Kenny talked a lot about the versatility of the BYU defense in terms of all the different looks they're going to throw at you, and kind of the early film study and just getting ready for them, which I'm excited about what the Cougs are going to bring.
They show a lot. They show a lot of a mix-up of fronts, a mix-up of the way they get to their defense. They show a lot of stems. So we gonna be prepared for those guys, and we got some schemes for them. So, yeah.
What about the linebackers? Are difficult about them? It seems like they're going between fronts and linebackers, make a lot of plays. What is it like, kind of knowing where that extra fitter is and making sure you guys are taking that into consideration?
Yeah, it's just reading the defense, pre-snap reads before we get down there, seeing where that extra head is going to be, staying tight to our tracks. So just knowing where we are on the field and where they're coming in from, inside or out or outside to in.
Shaping up to be a sellout. How much energy and juice does that those fans bring to you guys on the field, and what kind of tangible benefits does it have?
They bring a ton of energy. Me being on kickoff, just running down there, hyping up the crowd, that's one of my favorite things to do. And just seeing those guys, they just give energy, and that momentum and the way they react to things, it's a natural effect. So
Yeah, what are you expecting the environment to look like on Saturday?
I'm hearing it's supposed to be rocking. I know we're going to bring the energy on our end because, we got to be our audience. But I heard it's going to be a sellout crowd, so it's interesting to see what it's going to look like this weekend.
All right, Tristan, let's start with the big question. First and foremost, why was Arizona State the right place for you?
There's a lot of great answers for that question. I would say probably the number one is, it's in my hometown. I've been, living here for 17 years now. My dad also went to ASU, and he played football there. And, now it's just like me stepping in his footsteps, but also my own, just, doing what I want to do, and not just because my dad went there. And I feel like it's just the best spot for me, linebacker wise. I feel like they're going to build me into a great linebacker, and they tell me that every time. And I really do believe that. And that's why I want to be there and be a Sun Devil.
You mentioned you're following in your father's footsteps, an ASU legacy. What are the thoughts of just pretty soon you'll be playing in the same stadium that your dad did?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. People tell me that all the time, and I'm like, yeah, it's a blessing. Gotta thank God.
So obviously, this is a staff that since they got here a couple years ago has really kind of placed a priority on local players activating the Valley, obviously, as they like to say. What's it like just, seeing that staff led by Kenny Dillingham and just really the program as a whole that is placing a priority on local guys, local Arizona players?
Yeah, it's great. It's great, them showing love to Arizona players and, taking chances on them, like me. I was very blessed to be able to, to get to talk to Coach Dillingham and to be in his office, and he was telling me great things about me. And I was very appreciative about that. Even Coach Coop been, it wasn't like he called and they offered. It was like they've been in contact with me, building a relationship, and it was pretty good, pretty great from there.
So throughout the process and getting to know Kenny Dillingham, obviously one of the youngest coaches in the entire country, but a guy who likes to blend hard work with having fun. What's your read on Kenny Dillingham as the leader of a major college football program?
Yeah, it's great. It's great seeing him become the coach that he is. From also being from Arizona, and he's building ASU to be an even better program than what it was last year. It's just amazing for him to be able to build ASU that was kind of an okay program to now being 7-2, and they're beating pretty good teams, and it's pretty good to see and how they're building players and having fun, but also putting in that work. And that's exactly what college football is. And it's very cool to see that from Coach Dillingham.
Of course, in the next year they'll be playing for A.J. Cooper, and obviously the ASU linebackers are collectively having a pretty strong season, leading the this Sun Devil defense. What's your read so far on Coach Cooper, and what are the things that really kind of jump out to you about your future position coach?
Yeah, Coach Cooper's awesome. He's an awesome guy. I talk to him, not daily, but every once in a while, and we call and we talk about. Not just football. We talk about, how I'm doing, how he's doing, his family, my family. And, we sit down, have a conversation, just a regular conversation as a coach to a player. And, that's why I appreciate him for that, because he looks for the person first, not the player, and that's one of the big things for me. And I saw that very quickly. And Coach Coop, he's just a great coach. I went to the camp back in, I think, June, somewhere around that time, and I was doing my my drills and stuff, and he was coaching me, and then and I looked back at it and I was like, wow, I was like, that I can actually see him as my coach, my position coach, and getting better from him and from that.
And so you touched on it a little bit ago. Sun Devils in the midst of a very strong season. Currently controlling basically their destiny to make a run at the Big 12 title game, possible college football playoff spot as well. What's it like just seeing your future program have that level of success right now?
It's great. It's great. Every day I feel like I made the best decision in my life. Every more, and it's just great for me to be able in that position to where I can say that I'm going to play for that team, next summer, and I'm just very, very, very blessed and very appreciative for this opportunity.
So throughout the process and getting to know, kind of being around the program, of course, being a local and being able to see things up close, and of course, kind of getting to know the coaching staff, the players. What's your kind of view and your read on the team culture that Kenny Dillingham and his staff has put in place here?
The team culture is very I see it as brotherhood. That's what Coach Coop talks to me about, that they're brothers, and not just the linebackers, the whole team. That everybody has each other's back. Someone's on the ground, they go and help them up after each play. It's not never heated. They don't ever have same-sided fights on the team. It's always just great. It's a great culture to be at ASU, and I just can't wait to be a part of that, and to be with my my new team, and for them to welcome me also, and feel comfortable with being there.
So I believe that you kind of got a late start into playing football a little bit, even though your dad a football player in his own right. What was kind of how you initially got into the game of football that obviously is taking you to some pretty big places now?
Yeah, I don't really know. I always liked football, and then I guess my freshman year I was like, I'm gonna go out and play and see what happens. And my freshman year, I obviously did not think that I was gonna be in this position. I wasn't that good at all. Freshman year, it was my first year. Couldn't really, read anything. I was just a freshman player. And, the years, more and more came on. I was like, wow, I actually love football. And this is where it got me. So, yeah.
When did you get a sense that, that things kind of clicked and maybe this, this sport can take me places?
I think it was my sophomore year. And in my sophomore year is when I went out to a showcase, and I was doing stuff with my team, and then I got offered by NAU as a sophomore, and then I was like, wow, maybe I can do something with this, and then I kept on pushing it, kept on grinding, and then this is what happens.
Now, of course, what's it like just, being, having the success, that you and your team have had, and also, of course, getting on your way to a Power 4 program and basically kind of repping the west side of Valley football. I used to play at Moon Valley, so I'm kind of a little west side as well. So what's it like just, obviously, so a lot of schools in the east side of town get a lot of the rep and attention, but, what's it like just, keeping things real for the folks out west?
Yeah, it's great. It's great for Kellis, you know. I always talk good about Kellis because, you know, I'm always going to be a Kellis Cougar. You know, I've been here for all my 4 years, never transferred, and never thought about transferring. People always tell me, or they used to tell me, they would say, Tristan, why don't you just, you know, go out and go somewhere else? You'll get more looks, you know, more offers, stuff like that. And then I would just be like, oh, man, if you got talent, you know, they're going to find you. So that's what I believed in, and that's what I stuck with. But no, my team it's really cool to see, you know, where they came from, you know, from being, you know, 5-4 and then having, you know, 27 losses for 3 years. It's really cool to be, you know, seeing them now as 10-1 now, and we're in the playoffs, round 2 against some really good football teams. It's pretty cool to see them start from zero, and now we're making our way up, you know, climbing that mountain. You know, make the climb is our motto, Coach Cullis. So, yeah.
For any Sun Devil fans out there who might not have caught you in action for Kellis or senior film, give our audience a self-scouting report. What are the things that you bring to a football field?
Things that I bring to a football field, I think I'm a leader. You know, I'm a leader on my football team. There's about 7 of us, and I'm one of them, and I'm very proud to be one of them. I also wrestle, so I feel like I have a very determined mindset, and you can see that in my film that, you know, if I see a hole that I can shoot, make that tackle, you see me, then I'm going to get that tackle, and I'm not going to miss it. And I feel like that I'm always, like, I'm very disciplined when I play. It's like if I mess up, you know, I forget about it, short-term memory loss, and go to the next play. And you can see me never, you know, never fighting the ref. Hey, you know, what happened with this call? But I'm just a very disciplined player, and I'm very coachable too. I'm very coachable. You can see that if I mess up in the game or I make a mistake, you know, watch film on it, my coach get me right, and I go back out there, and then that mistake's gone. You know, I'm very disciplined, I have to say.
So you mentioned wrestling, and so that, you know, a lot of great Sun Devil defenders from decades past and to the present day have a wrestling background, especially playing, you know, a position like linebacker. How impactful has that wrestling experience maybe crossed over to playing defense?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great. I've been doing, you know, this mixed martial arts since I was 4. My dad put me in there, and my wrestling coach, his name's GT. He also wrestled at Arizona State, and he was he was in the lineup. He was a starter. And it's very cool to see that correlation from wrestling to football. You know, getting low aim point, shooting eyes through thighs. It's really cool. So I would say if you play football, you should also wrestle because it helps you out with, you know, a lot of things.
So ultimately, you know, a year from now, when you're running out of that Tillman tunnel through the stadium that your dad once played in, you know, what's it going to mean to you? What do you feel, kind of the feeling in that moment and thoughts in your head?
It's gonna mean a lot. It's gonna mean a lot. I'm gonna forget I'm gonna remember everything that got me here. You know, my school, my teammates, my coaches, my family. You know, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I'm gonna remember all that, and I'm not gonna, you know, become Hollywood or anything like that. I'll always be humble, you know, towards my peers and everyone that helped me, and I'm always gonna be disciplined, and I'm gonna be just a good person.
Now, in just a second here, we're going to jump into our Know Your Enemy segment to learn all about the BYU Cougars. But for right now, this one's about the homies. If you're looking for some fire food from a restaurant owned and operated by die-hard Sun Devils, you've got to make Burrito Express your local burrito joint. BE is a family-owned business that began in 1995 with a combination of authentic recipes, competitive prices, and a comfortable atmosphere. All that makes dining with Burrito Express a unique experience. Of course, by now, you've already seen their passion on Twitter. You know how incredibly active they are, supporting Sun Devil student athletes with a multitude of NIL deals. You know it by now. Cam Scattaboo, fueled by the burrito. That's the reason he's doing what he's doing. We all know it. We also all know that it's safe to say, if you're part of the Sun Devil family, Burrito Express is a business well worth your support. And everything on the menu, everything that they serve, every food item, drink, condiment, top-notch all the way. Burrito Express has 7 Valley locations, 2 in Gilbert, 1 in Mesa, 1 in Chandler, 1 in Scottsdale, a Tempe location near Kyrene and Elliott, and that ASU location near Rural University, just about a half mile from Mountain America Stadium. You got a 1:30 kickoff this week. You're going to be pre-gaming in the AM, so get you some breakfast burritos from BE to get the day started. They're open from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, while some locations are open as early as 6 a.m. during the week. and 8 to 3 on Saturdays and Sundays. You can order online at theburritoexpress.com for pickup or delivery. Be sure to give them a follow on social media. They're on Twitter and Instagram at BurritoEXP and on TikTok at BurritoExpressAZ.
Joining us now to give a preview of the BYU Cougars, returning to the show, is Mitch Harper of KSL Sports. Mitch, thanks for coming back on the show. How are you tonight?
Doing great, guys. Happy to be on, and it's exciting to be back on and do it at this time with these two programs as conference foes once again, so it should be fun.
So ASU, BYU, some major similarities this season, especially if you look back to last year for both teams. Losing records last year, ASU picked dead last in the Big 12 preseason poll, BYU 13th. Sun Devil fans pretty mind-blown right now with what's going on in Tempe and just being in this position. So how's the Cougar fan base handling this success? Maybe we'll step aside, last weekend, but overall, what's the fan base reaction to how this season has gone for the Cougs?
They're blown away too. No question about it. I mean, coming into the year, they were, chasing 6 wins was the goal, getting to the postseason, and to be in a spot where you're 9-1 and you control your destiny to get to Arlington with 2 weeks left. Yeah, even Kalani Sitake said it best after, Saturday's loss. Had you told him they'd be 9-1 before the season, he would have taken it. So this team has exceeded all expectations with a roster that you look at, over the last 4-year cycle. It's been, about, pretty much mid 3-star prospects, and they've hit in some of the transfer portal prospects they've reached out to, and they've done a nice job in player development. So despite the loss, this team is still playing, I think, with some confidence. Just coming away from practice on Tuesday night, there's a sense that they're going to bounce back, and we'll see. But the fan base is thrilled, and they've enjoyed being in the Big 12 Conference, and to be in an opportunity where maybe this could lead to a 12-team playoff. I think they're all blown away.
So over the course of the season, BYU's had some close calls, but always managed to stay on top and find a way to win up until last weekend. So was the loss to Kansas maybe just a kind of a blip in the overall road and the big picture, or were perhaps some of the concerns maybe of those seasons and those close calls maybe finally catching up a bit?
I think it could be catching up a little bit because the offense has regressed. In the month of November, they have been struggling. And you could maybe say it's, intense rivalry game against Utah, letdown against Kansas, but they are not finishing the job in the red zone offensively. 4 visits to the red zone last week against Kansas, only 6 points. That was 2 field goals. BYU is not scoring enough touchdowns. And early on in Big 12 play, they were consistently getting to, around 34 points per game. And they were blowing out some teams. Arizona was one of them, and they had a 21-point lead against Baylor and then held on. But, they were taking care of business early on, and that offense has regressed. And, Jake Retzloff was, some of the throws he had was a little bit inaccurate. And it was the Jake Retzloff at times that was the guy that needed a quarterback battle this offseason to win the job again. He was the starter last year for the final 4 games. So that's what's created some concern, but BYU's defense will travel. And second year with defensive coordinator Jay Hill, it's a really good group, and they shut down Kansas. 252 yards of total offense. That was it for the Jayhawks. Compare that to the 540 they had against Iowa State. BYU's defense is really good, and they're relatively healthy too. Pretty much all their key guys outside of Crew Wakely, he's a questionable status going into this one. He's the starting safety. Everyone else should be ready to go for Saturday afternoon in Tempe. So the questions this week lie on the offensive side. And if they bounce back, then, yeah, it'll be a blip on the radar.
And so you may have just answered the question ahead of time, but, give you the opportunity still. So following that loss, what are the most important matters to resolve for this final stretch of the season, maybe in addition to the things you just mentioned?
Red zone offense for sure. And I think some of it's, maybe the play calling in that area, but also the execution from Jake Retzloff. He's got to do a better job of at a minimum, throw the ball away. Don't underthrow it to where you've seen the past 2 games in red zone passes, fade routes, or it's getting picked off. One of them was a 2-point attempt against Utah, and then last week the final drive of the first half, BYU could have scored a touchdown there, and that could have changed the whole complexion of that game against Kansas. I think also BYU needs to run the football a lot more, and they had a lot of success against Kansas running that ball, and 15 carries for LJ Martin. He's the guy that they believe could be a real star running back. And if you get LJ Martin over 20 carries, even though he's a sophomore, he's the type of back that BYU has success with him. They can win ball games. Last year they had a game where he had 23 carries and they took down Arkansas on the road. So and LJ's dealt with some injuries at times this year, ankle in the preseason, a shoulder, midway through the season that caused him to miss a big chunk of the early part of the schedule. But he's back 100%, and he's playing some really good football when he does get touches. He's only had 26 touches the last 2 weeks. I think that workload's got to increase. I think he needs to be around that 20 carry mark in this one against ASU. And defensively, I think BYU's got to continue to set the edge well. I thought they did a really nice job against Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal. They weren't letting those guys get out to the outside, and that's led by Tyler Batty, who I think he had the best game of his senior year this season, preseason All Big 12 defensive end. Batty was all over the place last week, and he'll be another focal point once again this week.
So despite that loss, obviously the high level goal still very much on the table. Though obviously that could change depending on what the outcome is this weekend. So what would you say the mental state is of this team right now after that defeat last week? Are they still focused as they should be? Is that maybe creating some doubt within them? Where would you say they are right now?
Kalani Sitake said that it was Tuesday was the best, one of the best practices he's seen this season. We'll see how that carries over. It's interesting with BYU because I think they've had to remind themselves a little bit, at least the upperclassmen, hey, you're no longer in independence where, think back to 3 years ago, BYU's riding high, playing ASU. They got all the momentum from beating Utah, and got to maintain that the whole year because when you're an independent program, you had to be perfect to achieve anything on the national level. Now in the Big 12, you can drop a game or two, and as Arizona State has experienced, and still obtain the goals that you set before the year. And I think, the players that are upperclassmen have had to be reminded of that. Hey, you're no longer an independent. Everything's still in front of you. And I think that, this team I think they'll bounce back. I do, because they got a good core of leaders in that. And last year they navigated a lot of adversity and no one this offseason thought they were anything worth a ding. I mean, people in this area, they were just talking about, former Phoenix Suns assistant Kevin Young coming over to the basketball program. They were all the rage in the offseason with BYU men's basketball. No one was talking BYU football, which is crazy because this is a place that prides itself on its football program. And so this team's gotten really close, and you see that with this team, the leaders they have, the senior leaders like Batty, who I mentioned, Jake Retzloff too. So I would expect that, the morale's in a pretty good spot, all things considered, because they understand that everything's still in front of them, whereas in years past, it all went out the window with a moment like they experienced last week when they were an independent.
All right, so let's talk about some of those key Cougar players, starting off, of course, the quarterback. And, we take the kind of full body of work in this 2024 season. How would you evaluate the play of Jake Retzloff?
He's exceeded everyone's expectations. And, I think that because the bar was getting high and in November, you expect championship level football when you're a team that was number 6 in the college football playoff rankings. And you have that performance last week. You're prone to more criticism once again, like he experienced last season. But I think Jake's done a really nice job. He understands Aaron Roderick's offense completely. He's got a lot of control and a lot of autonomy in this offense where he can audible out of plays. I mean, you saw late in the game against Kansas a week ago where he's audibling out and he's calling his own option pitch on that 3rd and 6, which got stuffed. But sometimes, he's got the ability, he's got the autonomy to call things as he sees fits. That's what this offensive staff gives him. Jake's done a good job. He's got a pretty good arm too. And, last week at the end of the first half, the left side, his non-throwing arm, got a little bit banged up, and he was visibly, he landed on a quarterback run, landed on his arm, and he was kind of shaking that off. But that's happened twice this season with Jake, once in the Oklahoma State game and then last week against Kansas. So like most players, banged up, but still can in moments have some big arm capability. And I think he's done a solid job. You're going to put him in the same breath as, the Zach Wilsons, the Robbie Bosco's, Ty Detmers. No, BYU's got a great quarterback history, but he's a dang good quarterback, and he's good enough that maybe in one Saturday on the road in Arizona where it's going to be a hostile crowd, he could be good enough to shine and help BYU get an upset win. So I think Jake's done a really nice job thus far.
They touched on the ground game and LJ Martin and maybe perhaps, some more focus there. But when Retzloff does air it out, it seems like Chase Roberts, Darius Lasser are going to be the focal points of that aerial attack. What kind of threat do they pose to an opposing defense?
For sure. And Chase Roberts in particular, I feel like he's been underutilized a bit too. And I said that about LJ Martin on the ground attack, but and I think that's something I'm kind of monitoring going forward. If BYU can get the ball to their playmakers more, Darius Lasser, I think is really good, and he's had some big plays, some big individual games this season where he's had more than 10 catches in some games this year. But Roberts is the best, I think, pro prospect potentially, and he's had some great grabs this season. You think back to the Oklahoma State game, that game-winning drive. He had a fourth down catch that in traffic and moved the sticks. Chase is a lot more physical this year. He added some weight, about 10, 12 pounds to his frame. He invites contact a little bit more, where that was an area of weakness for him in the past. I think that BYU's got deep playmakers at that wide receiver spot. Keelan Marion, a UConn transfer, has also been a strong presence at the wide receiver spot and on special teams in the return game. He's got 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns. They could have Cody Epps back. He's a guy that a couple of years ago had some success in the 2022 season. Hasn't done much this year, but he could be another option to monitor this week against ASU. But it's a solid group, and that was one of the positions coming into the year for a team that had such low expectations. That wide receiver unit had high expectations, and I think they've exceeded expectations thus far too.
Now flipping over to the other side of the ball, Kenny Dillingham really took time on Monday to rave about the BYU defense, and in particular citing kind of the versatility that they provide or present in terms of the looks. So when ASU is offense going face to face against these Cougs, what are they going to see from a schematic standpoint?
Yeah, even front for BYU more times than not, and the heart of that defensive line really is in the interior. John Nilsson and Blake Mangelson. Mangelson had a huge game, number 93 last week, 7 tackles. He's been drawing some NFL interest from NFL scouts that have rolled through Provo and kind of poking around and looking at him because he was a former defensive end. He was a wrestler in high school, really good athlete, track and field background. He just added a ton of weight, was a developmental prospect when he arrived at BYU as a PWO, and now he's become a mainstay along that defensive front in the interior. So Mangelson and Nilsson are guys to keep an eye on. They'll have a lot of 5 defensive back looks too, and that nickel spot's going to be anchored by Jacob Robinson, number 0. I personally believe, and it's a bold take because he's, it's in a league with a guy like Travis Hunter and defensive backs. That's a high bar. But I think in that next grouping, I think Jacob Robinson's among some of the best in the league in defensive backs in this conference. He is a shutdown defensive back for BYU. He's a really good player. He's had a handful of interceptions this year, I believe 3 interceptions. And this whole BYU defense, 17 interceptions total. Every single game this season, they've had at least 1 interception. That has been a strength. And they've got, I believe, 11 different guys that have had interceptions this year. The linebackers, the DBs, they got a lot of speed too. And I think, compared to the defense 3 years ago that ASU saw, BYU is a lot more athletic this year, particularly at the linebacker position. Jack Kelly, number 17, he's someone to monitor. And he's got great closing speed. There's been moments this season where BYU's faced some, really quick quarterbacks, Jalen Daniels, Jennings from SMU, and Kelly's closing speed has been on full display when he makes some of those tackles, tackle for loss and whatnot. So BYU is very balanced, and they know who their top guys are too. 3 years ago, they did a lot of hockey subs, and they would just sub out, 9, 10, 11 guys. They don't do that with Jay Hill. They roll with the guys that have got them to this point, and they'll utilize those guys throughout the whole game, and they feel pretty good about their personnel. And they're coming off a game where they were really good a week ago.
So putting you in the shoes of ASU offensive coordinator Marcus Arroyo, what kind of game plan are you drawing up to most effectively attack this Coug D?
We got to establish the run. BYU's been prone to give up some yards on the ground, particularly in the quarterback run game. I mean, BYU, that has been one area that's been a common theme. Quarterbacks have had a lot of success running the football. The only guy that hasn't, oddly enough, was Jalen Daniels a week ago, and he's a guy that you'd think would have, some big yards. BYU contained him pretty well. But that's a positive sign for BYU because that has been an area of concern from Southern Illinois in week 1 to Utah a couple weeks ago with Brandon Rose. BYU has been prone to giving up yards on the ground to quarterbacks and at times on the ground in general. So if Arizona State with Cam Scadaboo, if they can have success running the football in BYU, then things can snowball on the Cougars. And, so that's going to be a big area of focus because BYU prides itself on in the trenches. And I think, too, that, that it'll be interesting to see how if Arizona State, if they utilize the tight ends or whatnot. Sometimes there's been some play action over the middle with some tight ends that have hit BYU with some big gains. But for the most part, BYU's been a really solid defense this year. There's not much to nitpick about them. They also have been suspect on early first drives to opponents. Kansas State, last week against Kansas. There's been a handful of other teams, Utah, where first drives of the game, BYU's defense is kind of on their heels a little bit, and they're giving up some big yards. So this could be one of those games where an early touchdown maybe could, get BYU on their heels a little bit. They tend to recuperate. I mean, you have to if you're going to be a 9-1 football team, and they did that last week against Kansas, and they adjusted. But they have been prone to giving up some early touchdowns, which has been a theme for this defense throughout the season.
So you've been reading my mind here a little bit. I was going to ask you to give us a breakdown of some of the names to keep in mind on defense, but you knocked that out of the park a couple questions ago, so appreciate that. So another one that you kind of touched on to obviously notice just in research, BYU's got some really impressive special teams performers. Will Farron's been absolutely clutch. You talked about those 2-3 kick and punt return touchdowns. How meaningful, how important for this successful season has it been to have that aspect of the game be such a strength of the team?
It's been huge because BYU hasn't had that phase of the game in decades where the special teams is a threat to score points and beyond just, field goals. So Keelan Marion, the kick returner, and Parker Kingston, the punt returner. Kingston had that amazing, punt return against Kansas State back in September that really swung things in favor of BYU completely. But yeah, that area of the game has been impactful, and BYU has found ways to make an impact beyond even return too. Just their execution. There's been some forced fumbles on that side. I mean, they have done a brilliant job on that side, and that's why BYU and I think Arizona State too, that they're complementary football teams where all three phases, if one's maybe lacking, the other kind of picks up the other, and maybe that difference, that X factor, can be the special teams. So BYU's been pretty sound, and Farron is really clutch too. I mean, that Utah kick was impressive, 44 yards, and that was as loud of a crowd as I've heard BYU involved in. I mean, I was on the field on that one, and that was a deafening crowd noise. And Farron just stepped up and booted that kick. So he's got that clutch factor. He's got about 54 yards. He could be his distance. I think that's his long, and so he's got a big leg. And if BYU needs to get 3 points, they can turn to him confidently if the offense does stall again, say in the red zone or whatnot. So that is a big area for BYU of strength for the Cougars in this matchup.
All right, so you've named some of the key players so far for BYU on both sides of the ball, but who might be one player on each side of the ball, maybe a little under the radar, that you think has a chance to play a big role in determining Saturday's outcome?
I think a guy that's interesting for BYU is Tava Taase, and he's an Arizona kid, grew up in Mesa, Arizona, and he's a tight end for BYU. And BYU doesn't utilize the tight end much, and they've got a great history over the years of tight end play. But with this offense under Aaron Roderick, it hasn't been a position that's highlighted too much. But Tava Taase, number 88, when they target him, it's impactful. He's got 3 touchdown grabs here. I believe he's only got 6 receptions this season. But when they target him, it's usually a chain mover or it's a touchdown. It's an impactful one. So he's a name I think to watch, and he's got local ties to the state of Arizona. So he would be one I would say. And then I would add, middle linebacker Harrison Taggart. He's just solid, and he was a former 4-star guy, originally signed with Oregon out of high school, transferred to BYU last year, kind of learned the system under Jay Hill, the defensive coordinator, and he's settled in perfectly because originally BYU had Ben Bywater, number 2, who they were expecting to be the middle linebacker, but then he was done for the season due to a shoulder injury before fall camp started. And Harrison Taggart stepped in, has just been outstanding. He's just a tackling machine in the middle of that defense. So he's not one that's going to make flashy plays per se, but at the end of a night, he'll see him with 7, 8, 9 tackles and go, wow, that was pretty impactful stuff. So those would be 2 under the radar guys that I think you should keep an eye on.
So obviously, if BYU were to win this weekend and keep up the winning, the fan base be very, very happy about that. But let's say if the opposite happens, and let's say if they fall out of the Big 12 championship game picture and go to a very good bowl game, but not the playoff. As we talked about in the beginning, the fans are thrilled to be where they are right now. But if that ends up being the final, outcome of this season, given the 9-0 start, how do you think the fan base would handle that?
It's a good question because, part of me would feel like they'd still be okay. I mean, you'd have to have perspective, but perspective's not usually applied to college football fan base as much.
That's true.
But I feel like there would be an understanding that, hey, you still got room to grow and got to get better because, like any team in college football this year, BYU's got their flaws, and they dropped to number 14 and in the college football playoff top 25, and that's fine. I mean, they're still the highest ranked Big 12 team. They control everything in front of them, but they still to be in this situation in only year 2 as a power conference team. BYU's always felt and operated like they were a power conference team, but they never had the resources. They never had that status of being in a power league before. So they're farther ahead in schedule than I think most people could have expected. But in this moment, you want to, when you see the playoff and you see a possibility of a BYU Ohio State playoff matchup, you want to see that. You want to see that play out if you're a Cougar fan. So they'd be a little bit disappointed, but I think they would also bounce back and realize, hey, these bowl games in the Big 12 are better than anything you were getting as an independent, where it was pre-Christmas and you're playing some Sun Belt Conference USA team, and no knock on those leagues or teams, but I mean, just playing a power conference opponent in a game after Christmas, that's a lot more exciting for BYU than they've dealt with in many years. But obviously having the moment in front of them to get to the playoff and get to Arlington, they want to seize that. And I think everyone around here is pretty excited for this matchup in Arizona. And I think too that, BYU and Arizona State they've got great history. And, for the old timers that have been around these programs, I think there can be a, respect of, there's some actual history between these two, and maybe it can be something greater in the Big 12 going forward. So it's exciting stuff.
Yeah, I grew up in Mesa, which is the same city where that tight end's from. Actually, it was a rival high school of mine, and growing up, there was a lot of BYU gear around. There was ASU, there was U of A, and BYU was probably the third that I remember seeing in the area of the world where I grew up.
It's BYU's got a strong following in Arizona, and I'm very interested to see what the BYU fan turnout will be. I know a lot of Cougar fans purchased tickets before the prices really increased. I don't know what I don't know what that number will look like, but BYU fans always find a way to work their way into stadiums when the opportunities to grab tickets is limited. But this will be a fun match, way more than BYU Arizona is good, but I just feel like the history, BYU and Arizona State and the WAC in the early days of Lavelle, I mean that was a big thing back then. And maybe now in this new era, Kalani can be BYU's modern day version of Lavelle, and maybe Dillingham can be the new Frank Kush. I don't know, but I just feel like these are two guys that love the programs they're at. It's an awesome matchup. I think it kind of really embodies the new 16-team Big 12. They might not be the elite of the elite, but dang, this is going to be a great football environment at the college level. And I just think it's going to be a really entertaining, I think, down to the wire game. And I don't think we could ask for anything more.
Yeah, just like everybody foresaw, ranked versus ranked matchup, heading into the year. So, Mitch, as always, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insight into BYU. And now that, conference rivals, we'll definitely be seeing more of you on the show. So, thanks again.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Now, Brad and I are about to chop it on up about this huge showdown between the Devils and the Cougs. But before we get into that, a huge shout out and thank you to Cactus Sports. While many ASU stars have come and gone, Cactus Sports is a community staple. Founded, owned, and operated by ASU alumni since 1992, every purchase made through Cactus Sports results in royalties that help support Arizona State University. Many of their competitors have been bought out and operated by out-of-state corporations, while Cactus Sports stays locally owned and operated. They consider it a privilege to be able to work together with their guests, alumni, fans, and students who help give input for some of the products that Cactus Sports buys. When you purchase from Cactus Sports, not only are you assured of the highest quality, officially licensed merchandise, but you also have the satisfaction of knowing that it truly helps support a local Sun Devil small business. Cactus Sports is located at 514 South Mill Avenue in Tempe. They're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and Sundays from 10 to 6. You can also view their full inventory and shop online at cactussports.com with free domestic ground shipping for orders of $75 or more. Hint, hint, you want to beat that holiday rush with the purchases you're going to be making for your friends and family coming up here in the next month or so? Get to Cactus Sports. They feature items such as the Iron Devils line, you know I love that one, and Activate the Valley line that includes a donation from every purchase to ASU's Sun Angel NIL Collective. They also have that Burrito t-shirt that you've seen advertised. And beyond that, they are also a licensed retail partner of another sponsor of ours, HomeField Apparel. So it all works out for you there. You can get all your shopping done at Cactus Sports. They're locally owned and ASU alumni operated since 1992. Go ahead and shop at Cactus Sports and think local, buy local, be local. Well, Brad, the time has come. Many are calling this the biggest home game for ASU since the Devils hosted Notre Dame in November 2014, and I'm inclined to believe them. This contest has major implications, not just on ASU's season, but the Big 12 championship picture, the college football playoff. That is our reality right now, folks. I mean, take yourself back just a year worth of time. Would you ever, in your wildest dreams, thought that in November of 2024, you'd be legitimately talking about Arizona State University not only being a ranked team, but in the conversation with 2 regular season games left to be in the college football playoff?
I was just hoping they could get to the LA Bowl.
Yeah,
so we could get in a 6 and 6, go LA Bowl by Gronk.
We both picked 5 and 7, and I would have been all right with that because, hey, that's a couple games better than last year. That's trending in a positive direction. Again, we've talked about how incredible this is, and we'll focus strictly on this game preview. But the magnitude, you just can't drive that home enough. You know what I mean? You can't truly overstate enough how important this game is, what the atmosphere is going to be like. It truly should be reminiscent because it's a similar kickoff time, maybe of that Notre Dame game. Obviously, not quite as many seats in the stands these days as there were 10 years ago. But my goodness, as the youths say, Mountain America Stadium on Saturday should be lit.
Yeah, I mean, you got 2 ranked teams coming in with all kinds of implications. And obviously, is what maybe we'll get to. I mean, this is I don't know. I mean, I know my stance on Utah being the secondary rival has been well known, but there's a lot of simmering sentiment, and maybe this is the game that boils over, that BYU's primed to maybe take that spot right under U of A because there's a history between these 2 programs that goes back decades. Of course, they had that battle in 2021. Merlin Robertson just needs to hold on to that ball a little bit better. But of course, now they're coming back down here. 2 teams, I believe, they were 13th in the preseason poll. ASU, of course, dead last. Now they're battling for a possible spot in Arlington. This is just unfathomably a weird season for a weird conference, and for once, it's in ASU's favor.
We're on the top end of the weird. That's a good place to be. As we talked about in the Know Your Enemy interview a moment ago, these are teams that have quite a few parallels, though there is that rivalry aspect to it among the fan base. And as you will hear in the later portion of this show, among former college student athletes from a variety of sports who played for Arizona State against BYU, there is some bad blood there for sure. But there are similarities between these 2 programs. You talked about them being ranked 13th in the preseason poll in the Big 12. Well, they're ranked 14th in the college football playoff poll right here. That is one heck of a turnaround in its own right. They were 5 and 7 last year, coming in at 9 and 1 right now. They're also 14th in the AP poll is BYU, and 15th in the coaches poll. So again, a matchup, a clash of top 25 teams, both of which had losing records last year. This is just kind of the definition of the madness in the Big 12. ASU and BYU, this will be the 29th all-time meeting. They've only played once this century. ASU leads 20-8 in the all-time matchup, but BYU has won the last 3, including the most recent one, as you mentioned, that 2021 matchup in Provo. The majority of the games between these two programs came in the 1960s and 70s when they were both members of the Western Athletic Conference, the WAC. So, like you mentioned, geographic proximity. Obviously there are an incredible amount of BYU fans in the state of Arizona. I grew up in Mesa. There's a strong BYU fan contingent. Anybody knows anything about Mesa, Arizona? So I grew up with a lot of it, like we mentioned kind of in that previous interview. When I was a kid growing up in Mesa, Arizona, it was like ASU fans, U of A fans, and there were a lot of BYU fans. I saw a lot of BYU stuff. My young mind was trying to grasp the world around me, and I'm like, well, why do you have a shirt on from a school from a different state? That doesn't make sense. Like, I know I don't like that one that's in red and blue. At least I can kind of understand why you may wear it, even though that might mean that, you might need to seek help for that, but I can understand why you do that. So this is one that, I think is just a long time coming. I think it's a very good thing for these two teams to be in the same conference. It just makes a lot of sense. And it never made sense to me, really, why they didn't play more in non-conference play. Like, I think between 98 and 21, they didn't play one another.
Yeah, and so hopefully we get more matchups. I'm actually just pulling up the future Big 12 schedule that they have. So, yeah, the next time these teams will meet will be when ASU goes back to Provo in 26, and then the Cougs coming back to Tempe in 27. So, seeing them a few times, so hopefully this is going to be a great game this Saturday, and then, it goes in the Devils' favor. Maybe the Cougs will have to wait a couple of years to get that revenge.
There you go. So, it starts at the top. Head coach Kalani Sitake, he's a BYU alum. Earlier in his career, he spent 10 years as an assistant coach at Utah, and then after his 1 year at Oregon State as an assistant, he took the head coaching job at his alma mater in 2016. So that's another wrinkle to the story, another similarity. You've got guys that are from the schools that they're coaching, which is a very impressive thing and adds to, obviously, fuel to what's going on there. He is 70-42 all-time at BYU, including this season with back-to-back 10-win seasons in 2020 and 2021. If you remember, during that COVID season with Zach Wilson, I mean, they were one of the absolute best teams in the country at that season.
Yeah, couldn't match up with Grayson McCall and the mighty Coastal Carolina.
There you go.
Clears.
It's a shame that guy had to retire. It really is.
Yeah.
So last season, as we mentioned, BYU, the first year that they played in the Big 12, they were 5-7, so a positive comeback, just like ASU this year. As many know, if you look at the schedule for BYU this season, they ripped through their first 9 games undefeated. Last week, they got as high as 6th in the college football playoff poll before that humbling loss at home last Saturday to Kansas. You could say they were kind of playing with fire a little bit, maybe flirting with disaster a little bit leading into that game. Prior to that loss, 4 of BYU's 9 wins were by 1 score, including the game that was right before it, that highly controversial Holy War win on November 9th that BYU had against Utah. That was one that was interesting to just watch unfold. I can only imagine what it'd be like if that sort of play dictated the outcome of an ASU U of A game, whichever team it would happen. I mean, that would be rough.
Yeah, although I can't see Graham Rossini maybe going off like, what was it, Mark Harlan?
Yeah.
Getting that forward. And to be fair, it seemed like the call was correct. And I mean, even if that wasn't the case, I mean, they still had to drive, 50 more yards?
Yeah.
Still, but man. Yeah, that's a nuclear scenario.
Yeah, exactly. that would be bad. So, all right, let's dive into the personnel of this team. Offensively, obviously, we'll start there. They have quite a bit of talent, not necessarily world beaters on offense. The other side of the ball, maybe a little bit more so, but they're winning games. They've got winners that they have, starting with quarterback Jake Retzlaff. Averages 228 passing yards per game, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 312 net rushing yards with 4 touchdowns. You look at those, and you may not say that that's necessarily the resume of like a college football playoff, caliber quarterback. But again, the dude is just a winner. He knows how to get it done. In conference play, his passing high is 228 yards against UCF. He also has 3 games this season with at least 50 net rushing yards. He does have 3 multi-interception games on the year. So again, someone that if you just look at the stats in a vacuum, that may not blow you away, but the dude knows how to get it done when it means the most.
Yeah, also has one of the best nicknames in college football, in BYU. And they celebrate it there. I mean, he's become kind of something of a folk hero. Yeah, and you mentioned, just a good solid guy, dual threat in ASU's. Faced a number of those and done reasonably well. I mean, they facing Avery Johnson last week and really kind of held him in check. But like you said, Joe, this does seem to be an offense that's, if you look at some of the key categories, they're mid in a lot of areas, and that's not necessarily a slight, but in terms of yards per carry, passer rating, yards per play. Dillingham really kind of said that schematically there's a lot of similarities between what the Cougs and Retzlaff are running compared to what the Sun Devils are running. But yeah, and like this is a team that wants to run the ball, but also has a dual threat quarterback who maybe the completion percentage like Levitz is, I think, hovering around 61, Retzlaff 58, but still a guy that can make some big plays with his feet and also make some big plays with the arm when he needs to.
Now, for the first time in what seems like since the non-conference games, ASU is not playing a team with a nationally elite running back. It just seems like week after week after week in the Big 12 that had been the case. That's not to say that they don't have a solid ground game. You just don't have that player like we've seen, like the Harvey of UCF or Giddens last week, or Brooks earlier in the year. So L.J. Martin leads the way on the ground for BYU. He's got a team-high 90 carries, 501 yards with 5 scores. He has missed 3 games. He had 100-yard performances in back-to-back games against Oklahoma State and UCF. Most recently, he had 15 carries for 76 yards in last week's loss against Kansas. Martin currently ranks 15th in the Big 12 in total rushing yards, but he does pack some punch. He has a more than respectable average of 5.6 yards per carry, so he's someone that again can get it done. Behind him, Hinckley Rapati, he's also missed a few games, but he's got 65 carries for 357 yards with the touchdown. So they use a few guys out there, but Martin does have the ability, to hit the century mark as he's done a few times this year.
Yeah, and both those guys are some power back, both over 220 pounds. So you throw in the legs of Retzlaff, who's over 300 yards rushing, and so it's obviously a ground-based attack that that they've had some success. And you mentioned like the per carry averages are pretty healthy because they of course have a big, tough, mature offensive line, and it's also pretty good in pass pro. So it'll be a interesting battle in the trenches for the Devils.
So in the past game, Chase Roberts, Darius Lassiter, head and shoulders above the rest of the team in terms of pretty much all major receiving statistics. They, just to put some numbers on it, so they have combined for 1,235 of the team's 2,343 total receiving yards. That's 52.7% of the overall receiving yards come from these two players. They combined for 80 of the team's 174 total receptions. That's 46%, and also 8 of the team's 20 total touchdown receptions. I understand the whole glass house not throwing stones things because ASU hasn't necessarily been spreading the ball around a ton in the pass game. But, again, we talked about these two teams having some similarities, and this is one. Roberts leads the way with 42 receptions for 659 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's got a pair of 100-yard games earlier this season. Very solid recent stretch, averaging about 78 receiving yards per game across the past 3 outings. Lassiter, he is a former Eastern Michigan transfer, the son of the late Arizona Cardinal great Kwame Lassiter. He's got 38 catches, 576 yards, 4 touchdowns. He had 2 games with at least 120 receiving yards earlier in the season and has caught at least 4 passes per game across a 5-game stretch earlier in the year. So those are the 2 guys you're going to see a lot of when BYU chooses to throw the ball.
Yeah, some pretty dangerous receiving threats, and of course the hefty tandem of Martin and Rapati in the backfield. And so, while this offense has been fairly pedestrian and over the last couple of weeks, and not necessarily hitting the heights, there's still a lot of some dangerous playmakers there. 2 key areas that are interesting to me that really kind of jump out, as kind of aberrations to kind of the team rankings in the 50s and 60s there. As Mitch Harper alluded to, some big time struggles in the red zone, 99th in red zone touchdown percentage at 55%. And man, just kind of surprising, especially with some running backs who are each averaging 5.5 yards per carry, but really bad on third down. They're 122nd in the country, about a 32% conversion rate. You would figure that, a team is adept, as the Cougs in terms of the personnel, the offensive line, a quarterback who's has some experience as well. Wouldn't be struggling there, so that could be an area that ASU's defense should hone in on.
Yeah, and just to throw some more names out there, guys that you heard be talked about in the Know Your Enemy interview, Keelan Marion, Parker Kingston, they are special teams dynamos. They also have some capabilities at wide receiver in the pass game. Mataava Taase, graduate of Mountain View High School in Mesa, Arizona. Man, did they kick the crap out of Dobson High School where I attended in virtually every sport. Just happened to go there in like the late 90s, early 2000s when Mountain View was like the most incredible high school program in the entire state at everything. He's that guy. He's got 3 touchdowns, even though he's only caught a handful of passes this year. I think he has 6 or 7 receptions on the year, if I'm not mistaken. You talked about those team statistics. Just to throw some of those out there, there really aren't any areas where BYU is like in the top 25, top 30. They're 32nd in total red zone offense, not necessarily the touchdowns, but just scoring. And I know that's a kind of a misleading statistic because if you're kicking a lot of field goals, you're still scoring there. So 37th in sacks allowed, tied for 38th in scoring offense. They average 31.6 points per game, tied for 49th in tackles for loss per game, 54th in turnovers lost, 57th in total offense, 59th in pass offense, 67 in rushing offense. They're a little over 130 teams. You look at that being in the 50s and 60s, as you mentioned, they're just right in the middle of, give or take, of the college football world at the FBS level in a lot of statistics. So again, you look at this offense, and you don't read this as a 9-1 football team, but they just get it done when they need to. However, as we mentioned, they kind of played with fire a little bit with a lot of close games that they won, and you got to give them credit for that. And again, the whole glass houses deal, because ASU's played in a ton of close games. So you just wonder, was last week when a levee breaks, or was that an aberration? Is that something ASU can really sink its teeth into and take advantage of?
Yeah, it's interesting, with that offensive, just, having its moments, of course, but, being kind of, solid there. But what's really helped key their success so far this year is that defense. Really good, especially against the pass. 3rd in the country in passer rating, and no team in the country has picked off more passes than the Cougs, 17. And we've talked about how Sam Levitt, one of his best traits is that he takes care of the ball. So this is going to be a really interesting matchup because, as we'll get to in the keys of the game, don't necessarily think, with that stout front, you can be one-dimensional in this game, so we need some balance. And I think it's going to be a real intriguing battle. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, the defense, when you read into these numbers, then it starts to make sense. Okay, now this is why this is a team that's in contention for a college football playoff appearance. In addition to the numbers that you just threw out there, Brad, BYU ties for 6th nationally in overall turnovers gained with 22. In 10 games. They rank 16th in pass defense, 20th in total defense, 23rd nationally in scoring defense. They only allow 19.5 points per game. Now, things slide a little bit. They're 58th in rush defense. They have some areas that they do struggle in on defense. 77th nationally in third down defense, tied for 98th in team TFLs, tied for 110th in red zone defense, 115th in team sacks. So that is kind of an area that they're doing very well generally on defense, but one thing that they may not be doing is necessarily getting the backfield to as high a degree as they're doing other things.
Yeah, and so this is a defense that Kenny Dillingham kind of raved about a little bit in terms of just all the kinds of different looks that they can do. Whether it's 3 or 4 man down fronts or just playing 1 or 2 high looks on the back end of the defense. This is going to be a nice chess match. Marcus Arroyo going at it with this very talented Cougar defense, and as we'll get to, there's some notable names, some very productive players for BYU on the defensive side. Yeah,
some names to keep in mind for Saturday's ball game. They've got a very good pair of linebackers. Harrison Taggart, he has a team-high 63 tackles. Isaiah Glasker, 49 tackles with a team-high 10.5 for loss. Defensive end Jack Kelly, he has a team-high 4 sacks. Probably the best of them all. You heard a little bit about him earlier. Cornerback Jacob Richardson. He's one of the national leaders in terms of career interceptions among active players. This year, he's got 32 tackles and a team-high 3 picks among that team that is very, very good at picking off the ball. So even if they may not be household names that you're familiar with, unless you're the type to follow BYU football closely, make no mistake about it, this defense is for real.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Robinson out there. He has the ability to play outside, also can play some slot, some nickel. And so I'm kind of wondering because of ASU, we talked about just Jordan Tyson's been the man, and we're still looking to see which other receivers are going to be able to step. It looks like Jake Smith's not going to be able to go to this week. And Xavier Guillory is has been in that kind of like catch type of situation. Stovall has a catch per game, it seems like. So is that matchup between Robinson and Tyson going to get interesting as well? And it's kind of interesting. You mentioned their struggles, in terms of making plays behind the line of scrimmage. The linebackers getting after it, but like Tyler Batty is a guy who's been in Provo for a while and as a preseason all-conference guy. Not necessarily put up the huge numbers, but a good veteran presence there. So some definite pieces, for this overall, strength of the team overall. But this defense is going to be good, and we've seen the ASU offense in recent weeks finding greater balance, and maybe with another week of rest and recuperation, maybe Scat comes out a little bit stronger than he did against Kansas State. So all kinds of good matchups at all three levels of the game on Saturday here.
Now, before we jump into our keys for the ball game and our scoreboard predictions, want to send a huge thank you to the Spaghetti Shack, which you know by now, not just owned and operated by Sun Devils, but by former Sparky, the Sun Devil. The Spaghetti Shack is a community-focused to-go pasta concept started right here in Tempe, Arizona by 5 lifelong friends. They serve a menu starring spaghetti, meatballs, garlic bread, and a few other fan favorites. They make it their mission to provide quality, affordable food as quickly as possible so you can spend less time cooking and spend more time with your loved ones. They offer a variety of Italian-American options for you to choose from, whether you want to pick one of their delicious options or build your own shack by choosing the amount of pasta, type of sauce, and protein. They have options for anybody and any family. They've got 2 locations, one in Tempe at 6340 South Rural Road. That's near the intersection of Rural and Guadalupe. They're open every day from 11 to 9. And for those up north, they've got a Pine Top Lakeside location at 592 West White Mountain Boulevard, open daily from 11 to 8. You can follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at The Spaghetti Shack, and on Twitter at Spaghetti_Shack. All righty, now let's jump into it. A crucial game. Things are already very, very exciting for Sun Devil football, but man, if they walk out at Mountain America Stadium with a W this Saturday, then business, quite frankly, will really pick up, in the words of the legendary Jim Ross. So, Brad, to get there, what's your first key?
Get the crowd rowdy and keep them rowdy. ASU's got one of the best home field advantages, and we've seen it time and time again. Some highly ranked teams come to Tempe with aspirations for great things, and the Devils take them down. Sometimes Devils aren't very good, but this Sun Devil team is good, and this is going to be a sellout crowd. It's official. It's in the books. The student section should be going rowdy. Weather's going to be great. ASU has been able to get off to some very hot starts, and even last week on the road against Kansas State, a tremendous start. If they can replicate that, that place is going to go crazy. And talking to some of the players today, they really emphasized how they really feed off that energy. There's a tangible impact on the field, or the game on the field, for what happens in the stands and the energy and the juice that's there. So I want the Devils to come out here, get off to a fast start, get that crowd into it. Don't make, they're going to be ready to start, but you don't want them to, if ASU falls behind early, you don't want to lose that edge. So I want to see them get that crowd ramped up, keep them there for the duration.
So a key of mine is kind of a balance to that. Well, I certainly agree with all of that. For the players, for the coaches, you want to kind of center yourself emotionally. You want to use those emotions, but don't let them use you. We've compared, as pretty much the entire Sun Devil fan base, the magnitude of this game to the Notre Dame home game in 2014, and I mean, goodness, it was a madhouse that day. That one got a little rocky, but the fans stayed in it. Just one of the most electric atmospheres you'll ever see at what was certainly then called Sun Devil Stadium. You just don't want to get too amped up to where you're playing sloppy. You don't want to get, false starts or offsides because you're just so rearing to go. You don't want to have a lack of focus because you're looking around and you see this amazing sold-out crowd that's going nuts for you. You want to focus on what you're doing to do your job on the football field. So there is that blend. There is that fine line of not shutting out the emotional aspect. You don't want to pretend the crowd's not there. You want to feed off it. I mean, you're in your home stadium. They'll be just going crazy about it. But you just don't want to let emotions guide what you do. Use them to your benefit, but know when to keep your composure.
All right, my second key is return to the scat and kind of just keep that offensive balance. The ground game wasn't getting going to the heights and the levels that we've seen for the most part. Cam's first game back coming off that shoulder injury, but Levitt to Tyson really was the saving grace there, and that we've seen over the last 3 weeks has really kicked into another whole nother gear. But we talk about this is a BYU team whose strength is on the defensive side, very talented and have some playmakers on all 3 levels of the defense, and so ASU cannot afford to be one-dimensional. This isn't like Mississippi State coming in here that's just going to give you a look to just run down their throat for the entire 60 minutes. ASU is going to need to be able to have that offensive balance, keep that defense honest, and win those one-on-one battles when they have the chance.
To me, the turnover battle is going to be huge. Obviously, that can impact the outcome of any game, but it's really, really important in this one. These 2 teams are tied for first in the Big 12 and 14th nationally, being +9 in the turnover margin on the year. But how they've gotten there looks different between these 2 teams. BYU is tied for 6th nationally with 22 forced turnovers, while ASU is tied for 8th with just 7 lost turnovers. So they both generate quite a few of them, or they both obviously balance it out very well. But BYU is generating a lot, and ASU, knock wood, has not been turning the ball over quite a bit. So we're going to see where that one ends up. Is BYU's turnover generating prowess going to take ASU out of its typical ball control ways? That certainly would skew things that other direction. Or is ASU going to get that advantage and have just some crucial turnovers that they forced, kind of like they did last week, where on the first and last possessions, if you ain't first or last, on the first and last possessions that Kansas State had, they generated turnovers, and that's how you end up winning that crucial ball game. See how things work out in terms of ball control this week.
All right, so my third and final key is switching over and focusing on the Sun Devil defense. This is a Cougar team that kind of complementary football, like play good defense, like to run the ball, and they have 2 powerful backs, a quarterback who can make some big plays with the feet. Just hold fast against the run. ASU did a great job against Kansas State, and one of the best run teams in the conference a week ago for half the game, and then got gashed in the second half. And thankfully, as we talked about, they were able to hold on. I don't think ASU is going to be able to afford necessarily that imbalance. They've got to have the greater consistency in stopping that ground game, and if they're able to do that, put the onus of the Cougars' game plan and the offensive success on Jake Retzlaff, I think that is the better way to increase their chances of getting that 9th win.
The final key for me is 2 words that have in some capacities haunted a lot of Sun Devil fans this season, even though it hasn't necessarily been a catastrophic aspect, and those words are special teams. We did a Sun Devil stock report earlier in the year, and you asked me, will a game be lost? Will a game be cost by kicking? And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying what I'm about to say is that BYU has incredible special teams. We talked about it earlier. Their kicker, Will Farron, absolute nails, 19 out of 22 this season. That's a high 80s percentage. That's very, very good for a place kicker. Keelan Marion has 2 kick return touchdowns. Parker Kingston has a punt return touchdown. So
the punt return touchdown of the season. That was an incredible one.
Yeah, so they can get it done in multiple aspects of special teams. Obviously, we have seen special teams be an area where ASU can turn the tide of a game, as it did with the blocked punt against UCF. We saw some momentum be gathered with Parker Lewis's 47-yard field goal last week. We've seen Canyon Floyd have solid games and very good games. So it's there for ASU. We've seen it in bits and pieces. I just feel like a game where these 2 teams come in so evenly matched with so much on the line, you think that could possibly be the determining factor is special teams. So it's going to be important, just kind of like the turnover topic, that ASU is able just to kind of be step for step with them and just not have any catastrophic differences where it's like, okay, yeah, Utah went 3 for 3 on their field goals. Their punter averaged 45 yards, and they had solid returns. And ASU was 0 for 2 on field goals. The punter averaged 35 yards. Like those sort of discrepancies we can't see in a game like this.
Must be something in the water in the state of Utah. Just good special teams up there.
There you go.
All right, so prediction time. So I think this is going to be a kind of a dogfight. I mean, it's going to be a real close game. I think start to finish. I don't see either team necessarily, unless things get real weird with some fluky kind of turnover flurries for one side or the other. I think this is going to be a good back and forth slugfest. Not a ton of offense, but also I think the defense, both teams' offenses have enough playmakers to keep things going. So not necessarily kind of Steelers Ravens in the teens, but I think this is going to be kind of one of those games where it's like the home team. And not necessarily who has the ball last, but the home team's going to be able to feed off it a little bit better. I think we're going to see a better effort from Camp Scadaboo in terms of the run game getting going a little bit. And I think that what we've seen over the last month in that Levitt to Tyson connection, even against a very good pass defense, is going to be pretty good. I think it's going to be a challenge for the Sun Devil defense to keep that run game and the different ways they're able to employ their backs and the dual threat quarterback a little bit. But ultimately, ASU gets a win, 28-24, 9-2 Devils.
So, echoing a lot of that, I see it being a dogfight. I see it just being like a Rocky movie, just punching each other back and forth. Very, very different from the other, boxing match that kind of occurred last Saturday. I was going to make a joke like Paul Tyson, that was a quarterback for ASU. And then he was, I wonder if his Twitter account got blown up because people were just getting lost.
I did see Jordy Ham make a reference there.
Nice, so. Our guy Jordy. I like it. I like some cheesy jokes. But anyhow, getting back to the matter at hand, the much more important matter at hand. It's going to be a battle. Obviously ASU fans are going to be rocking. There's going to be a very strong BYU contingent. I'm really eager to see what their turnout's like. I know it's going to be significant, but I wonder if it's going to be noticeably significant.
Be some blue.
Is that going to it probably will be as good of a turnout as there's been from an opposing fan base outside of Arizona in a very long time. I don't see this necessarily being one of those games, where a team gets up by 10 or 14 and then the other chips away and ties it, and you have this kind of ebb and flow pendulum swinging thing. I think it's just going to be much chippier than that. It's like we talked about a moment ago. We're just wondering if there was going to be a game where the place kicking for ASU was going to cost them a big win. I've been wondering that. And this ain't going to be that game. Parker Lewis walks it off. 24-23. Tempe goes nuts. The Devils ride.
Wow. All right. That would be a hell of a course correction. And in a season that's been wild enough, that would be just the latest. That'd be fun to see. Local kid making good.
Now, folks, I know a lot of you probably might shut it down after we finish our review. That's kind of a standard point, but don't do that right now. I'm going to tell you why. You don't want to do that because we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk some Sun Devil basketball with our guy Kyle Dodd coming up here in a moment. Give us some great insight on Sun Devil basketball, but also his opinions on this upcoming football game and Brigham Young University. That's worth the price of admission by itself. So stay tuned. Keep listening for that. And before we jump into that, just want to give a big thank you to Sun Devil Family Charities, a 501c3 nonprofit organization created primarily for the purpose of raising funds to provide financial assistance to ASU alumni, students, staff, and immediate family members adversely affected by medical issues. Their SDFC Cares program allows qualified individuals to request financial assistance by completing an application and submitting verification of medical expenses, which are then evaluated by their patient services committee. So what I'm saying here is if you or a loved one, if you have official ties to Arizona State University, if you are now or in the future are suffering financial hardship due to medical conditions, we certainly hope that that's never the case. But if life happens to be that way, Sun Devil Family Charities might be able to provide some financial assistance to you or your loved ones. Monetary donations are always appreciated and support those in need due to an unexpected medical condition. They also have volunteer and sponsorship opportunities. All that information is available on their website, which is sundevilfamily.org. And you can follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/Sun Devil Family Charities and on Twitter at SunDevil_family. So even though Sun Devil football is on an absolute tear right now, ASU hoops is in full swing with 5 games under its belt and some big ones coming up in the not too distant future. So to talk some basketball, of course, we had to bring our good buddy in, Kyle Dodd. You remember him from back in the day playing guard for the Sun Devils. Of course, he is part of the illustrious ASU radio team for the broadcast. KD, my man, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I've been waiting for this. I want Matt Berry to feel this. I want him to understand that we are moving in the right direction. He's got work to do.
So what's the count now?
I'm kicking myself. I think now you are at least 2 ahead. So you got some cushion. Yeah.
And we get him on. We get him on once a year though. If the football team gets on a roll, we might have to bring him back. So you'll be safe for at least a few weeks.
He's coming back. Things are good right now in football. He's going to come back, but I got him right now. Just that's.
There you go. Living in the moment, my man. So we'll obviously like dive into details about, the games and the players and the key things that have been happening so far. But just, taking it on a general scale, ASU's 4-1. How you feeling about these first couple weeks of the season for Sun Devil basketball?
I'm feeling good. If you asked me like 12 days ago, I would have been totally different. I was like telling your dad, Joe, I was like, man, this might be a long season. And not in the sense that we're not good. It was just we're super young. And I just didn't. I was like, man, I don't know, man. These guys, they're super talented. This is the most talented roster Bobby's had. But are we going to put it together? Are we, is this just going to be, struggling throughout the year? And then literally 10 days later, I feel like, oh my God, I'm so jacked about this roster. Like I think they are young still, and I think we are going to have some growing pains, ups and downs. But yeah, I'm super encouraged how fast they've come together, how much better they've looked in the last couple weeks, and the chemistry, the flow, just just offensively, how much better we've gotten. I'm super excited. I mean, it's a different type of roster talent wise than we've had at ASU in a long time, and I think it's starting to like come together a little bit. And I think there's going to definitely be some ups and downs, but we're in good shape.
Talking about one of those downs, and thankfully it didn't officially count, was the blowout exhibition loss at Duke. But from that kind of painful afternoon, what kind of lessons do you think the team was able to take away from there that they've maybe applied and helped to in the strong 4-1 start?
I think playing that game was massive, like not in the sense that, I mean, obviously it was cool. Bobby Hurley going back to Duke and just the experience, like for me personally, it was just awesome. But the game sucked. And I think that, a lot of people overthought that. But I don't think we play as well as we do at Gonzaga. A week later, 2 weeks later, if we didn't play that game. And Gonzaga was like literally probably the best college basketball atmosphere I've ever seen. It was insane. It was their first home game. They haven't lost a home opener in 40 years. And we went toe-to-toe with a team, in my opinion, that could win the national championship this year. They have size, they have length, they have shooting. They are every part of a national championship basketball team. And we went toe-to-toe. We went punch for punch. And I don't think that happens if you don't play the Duke game. I mean, I know everybody's like, oh, we lost by whatever, 50, 40, whatever. I don't think that happens if they didn't experience it. And I think that's why Coach Hurley does what he does. There's so many years that we scheduled 12 non-conference home games and we're 12-0 or 11-1 or 10-2 or whatever. But Bobby just plays anybody anywhere, and I think that's the reason. And I think that Duke game, it really helped, just to kind of get us to where we're at right now.
So currently ASU has 4 guys averaging between 11 and 13 points per game. So what does it do for both ASU and, on the flip side, the opposition to have the scoring, with that level of distribution?
Yeah, I mean, I just think you got a number of really super talented young guys, and then you got a number of guys that played a lot of college basketball that are transfers, and it's kind of been a balance of like where the shot's gonna come, who's gonna trust who, and it's been really nice to see over the last week. Just you got guys that you can throw the ball to, like a guy like Jihad, you could throw the ball to in the post and he's going to get to the line or he's going to get a good shot. Or you have a super talented guy like Shannon that's just going to raise up and knock down a bunch of threes against GCU. It's just, you can go a number of different ways. It's a luxury for Bobby this year, I think, to be able to go a number of different directions. And it's not going to be a team that's led by one guy. I think this year, it might be a different guy every night, to be honest.
So you touched on Josan Seinan really coming on strong, especially these last few games. Came to ASU with just massive expectations as a 5-star. That added little wrinkle as far as the school that he was going to go to before he signed with ASU also adds a little something to it as well. So what have you seen from him so far, and what do you think his ceiling is playing basketball at ASU and beyond?
Yeah, it's just one of those guys that you're like, man, we just haven't had that guy. Like we haven't he's not going to be great every game. He's super young. Yeah, I think he's like one of the. I think JQ Quaintance is the youngest player in the country. I think Shannon is top 5 youngest players in the country. So I mean, he's going to make mistakes this year, but like to see him elevate and hit those shots against Grand Canyon, I'm like, oh my God, like that is just a different level player that we just haven't had that guy, you know? So I'm super impressed with him. His stroke is super smooth. It's in rhythm all the time. He looks like he's always under control. He's always balanced. And yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, every time he hits a shot, I'm like, hey, we got that guy from U of A. That's awesome. Like that's it's a real credit to Bobby and his staff and what we're doing recruiting wise and coaching wise to pull a guy like that into Arizona State. Like, I mean, we have 2 5-star kids between him and Quaint, and then Ali is the 4-star kid. That's like, I think he's going to be one of my favorite players. I throughout the year, he hasn't, he will continue to develop, but it's just awesome to see that level of talent in a Sun Devil uniform.
Now, there's been the expected kind of highs and lows from the youngest player in the country, as you mentioned a moment ago, Jaden Quaintance, so far this season. What is your early evaluation of his play so far?
I love the kid, man. He plays his ass off. He just plays so hard. You can tell, like I was joking with my son. My son's 16, and he is 6 months older or 6 months younger than Jaden, and my son is not even hit puberty yet, and I'm like, so we were at a ASU scrimmage, and I took him, and I was like, dude, what if Bobby asked you to go out and guard that guy? Like, you're only 6 months younger than him. Like, that's crazy. Like, and I'm joking, but that's the reality of it is he's so young and he is so physically gifted. He plays so hard. I was telling somebody on the other night, he carries like an old school, like outdoor basketball everywhere he goes. Like on the road, he came down to breakfast and he's holding this ball, like beat up basketball. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. Like, and then he like literally went to the game with it. And after the game, I was watching him go in Las Vegas after we played Santa Clara. He's walking to the locker room with the ball. And I'm like, he's a kid. He literally is a kid, and he loves basketball, and he plays his ass off. And I'm like, so I think my whole point of this is he's gonna make a lot of mistakes, but he is freakishly gifted defensively already, and he's just gonna get better and better offensively. He's looked the part to me so far, for real. Like I know he's number 1 ranked center in the country. To me, I don't see a better freshman in the country than him.
So in addition to those high-profile true freshmen like Seinan and Quaintance, who else on this team has caught your eye so far through these first 5 games?
I think Austin Mason, a guy that made me feel really old because I played with his dad. That's real reality hit. I'm like, man, that's not normal that I'm announcing the kid that played with. But he to me, he just impresses me more and more every time we take the floor because he's running the show. He doesn't do anything flashy. He's not going to go dunk on you. He's not going to go do anything crazy elaborate, but he just runs the ball club and he gets the ball where it needs to go, and he's under control, his pace, his rhythm. He's just a floor general. So I really love his game. And then obviously I think Jihad, Bashir is just like a guy that you can you can give the basketball to, in the mid post, in the post, and late in the games, early in games, whatever. He's just kind of crafty. So those are probably the two guys outside of the talented freshmen that I would say have really. BJ Freeman too. He's been really good too. But I just think I think it's good. I think it's a good group. I think it's a good balance of and different types of guys, different types of players, but they kind of are starting to complement each other.
So if I heard you right, you're calling Jihad a crafty devil. Shout out to the greatest tailgate group in the game right there.
Let's go. I'm sure he likes brisket and pulled pork too. So
exactly right. So you touched on those two key games that have been played so far, Grand Canyon and Gonzaga. Let's talk a little bit more about those, starting with that trip up to Gonzaga. Not to really harp on the moral victory thing, but you've mentioned how important that sort of game is to play a team like that. So what can that sort of game do for this team, or what has it done despite it being a loss?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's huge because I saw that team grow up in the first 20 minutes. And Joe, I was telling your dad didn't make the trip because of the football game. And I was telling him, I was joking with him the other day. I was like, man, I was kind of hoping we didn't win that game because I was going to be sad for Tim that he couldn't get to call the game. I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest game ever, and Tim's not here. So, but what I was telling him is, I really saw it before my eyes. I saw kind of Bobby and the coaching staff and the kids collectively they just came together. They decided, hey, we're pretty damn good, and we're not scared of Gonzaga or whoever, and it was really cool to watch that game because if you remember the game, it's just every time Gonzaga threw a haymaker and went up 6, we punched back and we tied the game up. And every time, I was like, all right, here we go. We're done. We came back and we made plays, and it was just really cool to see those moments and the team grow early in the season. And then, so for me, I'm like, this is something they can draw upon, 3 months from now when we play Iowa State at Iowa State or whatever great Big 12 venue. There's not going to be a better venue than Gonzaga or Duke. So the guys aren't going to be intimidated no matter where they play. And not to say they're going to play well every game or every road game, but those are just the things that you can pull out of your memory bank later in the year.
So on a positive note, the win over GCU was pretty significant, and obviously beyond state bragging rights, what did that win do for this Sun Devil squad?
Well, first of all, GCU is not a normal university. That's just a disaster over there. No, I'm just kidding. I had to slip that in there. No, I mean, honestly, it was a cool game. It was, as much as I would love to talk trash on GCU, they did a freaking fabulous job of getting people there. They built a great program. And it was an important game, in my opinion. It was an important, people could downplay it, but it was an important game for ASU because if you lose that game, it's a disaster, And if you win that game like we did, people aren't that juiced about it because, you should beat GCU. But they don't understand that Grand Canyon is a legitimate college basketball program. They're a legitimate Division I school that they've invested. They don't have football. They don't have, the other sports. They've invested all their time and money in their basketball program. And I mean, Vegas had them favored. A 6-point favorite. That was a good win. So I think it was huge for ASU, just not only to own the bragging rights or whatever, but I just think overall it was a good win. It was a good non-conference win, and I was actually joking with someone today. I'm like, yeah, I did the company line, hey, we should play this game every year. Let's play this game. I'm like, but secretly, I don't want to ever play them again. I really want to be like, oh, yep, beat you guys 3 times. Peace. Let's go. But I think it is a game that needs to be played, honestly, every year. It was super cool, super great atmosphere. They've done a great job. building their basketball program, and it was a really, really, really good non-conference win for the Sun Devils.
So what do you need to see over these last 6 non-conference games before the team, dives into the gauntlet that is Big 12 play?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just think, like if you asked me a week ago, I was telling people like I just wanted to stay ahead of schedule in the sense that like I don't want to have like a losing record. I don't want us to be, because I know Coach Hurley's schedule's a crazy schedule, so I didn't want to be like 2-3 or 2-5, or I'm like, if we could just stay ahead like 5-3, 5-4 or whatever. Now we're sitting here at 4-1, and you're like, oh, let's go, like let's get greedy. And so I think I mean, obviously Wednesday, tomorrow night is a winnable game. Obviously it's a game you should win at home, and then you go to Palm Springs, and it's over Thanksgiving. There's two games there that are going to be really solid resume building wins. If you like want to look past that, it's going to be an interesting tournament. But I also think the way they're playing, they're winnable. So I think over the next 6 games, if you could get to the point where you go into the Big 12 conference and you're sitting there and you've stacked some wins together and you have 2, maybe 3 losses, then you're in good shape, because the Big 12 schedule is going to be, it's going to be a gauntlet. But if you're playing well, your wins are going to mean more. I mean, a 500 record in this Big 12 might be an easy trip to the dance. So I just think the big thing for Coach Hurley and his staff is just continue to get better. They're so young. Just continue to get better and try to like gain some momentum, stack wins together, and gain some momentum as you enter the tough gauntlet of the Big 12.
So staying on the topic of conference play, my goodness, Big 12 is absolutely stacked. I mean, we knew that going into it. Obviously, as we talked about last year, we know that you're a diehard Pac-10, Pac-12 guy. But here, looking at the Big 12 for this season, gosh, 3 of the top 7 teams in the polls right now? I think about half the conference is either ranked or like just on the outside looking in as far as those receiving votes. So what does ASU need to do to be prepared for that grind, that grueling grind of the Big 12 schedule that they're going to face here starting when the new year hits?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It really is like, like I was joking a minute ago about never playing Grand Canyon again. I wish that we never played Kansas again because we go there, beat them. They're number 2 in the country. They come here the next year, they're number 1 in the country. I'm like, I don't know when the next 2 wins against Kansas are going to come. It's that good, and the conference is that good. So I think the big thing, I guess, to my point, is the Big 12 is it's going to be a freaking dogfight. And what's really cool is, like, if you look at our schedule, we have some really, really cool, me and Doug Tamaro were talking about this today, we have some really, really cool Saturday home games. We have like 6 amazing Saturday home games. And if you're not coming to those games, you're not a Sun Devil fan. Like, it is crazy the teams we have coming in, and then the places we go this year. It's just like you had some times in the Pac-12 where you're like, oh, well, that's a win, whatever. I don't see wins. I see every single game being a dogfight, and that's why I think that Coach Hurley has done such a good job in the non-conference scheduling and getting his team prepared, because it's going to be it's tough. This is the best conference in college basketball, in my opinion, this year, and it's going to be really tough. But I feel pretty good about where they're at right now. Honestly, I think they're going to continue to get better, and I think we can win a lot of games, honestly.
So now, before we get you out of here, obviously you're our Sun Devil hoops guy, but as everybody knows, you're a big sports guy. Big fan of everything ASU. Sun Devil football with the huge one on deck against a team I know that you've got some opinions about. So tell us what you expect to see out there when the Sun Devils face BYU in that nationally ranked game coming up here this Saturday afternoon, Mountain America Stadium.
Man, first of all, how soft and sensitive are BYU fans? I started a firestorm today. I'm being dead serious when I tell you this. It's known not just from me or Arizona State people, but like as a college athlete, I have a lot of friends that played college basketball. I have a lot of friends that played college football. It's BYU to me, like to a lot of people, is they're one of the dirtiest. Like they play dirty. Like it's just a dirty. Like it literally is. And so it's kind of an unknown, like an ongoing thing for former athletes, current athletes. So I tweeted that today, and then I think I told you guys off the air here. I was like, my son came home and was like, Dad, you got lit up on Twitter today. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, he's like, your tweet last night. And I looked, and I had like seriously DMs, everything, just people blasting me. Like it's not, I don't care. It's not personal, but I'm just saying, you ask anybody, BYU notoriously is a dirty program in the sense of playing on the field. Like they're just dirty. They are. I'm sorry. So I hope we kick their ass, to be honest. And that's my honest opinion. I hope we kick their ass. There's not a program outside of U of A that I dislike. Probably BYU's up there. So I hope we kick their ass. And like I said, I just tweeted like 20 minutes ago. I said, all these people are acting fake tough people. I'll be at the game. I'll tell you where I'm sitting. Come say that shit to my face. Sorry for the bad language, but come talk to me. And that has nothing to do with like, this is just me being a competitor and me being all in on Kenny Dillingham and ASU football. Like, I don't care. I'll be sitting with Joe. That's the other thing. I know I'll be sitting by you, Joe. So I know you'll protect me. So
I got you, man. I got you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And Hirsch, our boy Hirsch, he's been punched a couple times, so he's fine. He'll protect me. But in all seriousness, like I'm so pumped for this game, like the biggest home game in 10, 15 years. And what a awesome opportunity for this program. And what an awesome opportunity for Kenny and the boys. And so I mean, like, if I added to it, so be it. Let's go.
There you go. Turn up the heat. You know I like that. Keep things spicy.
Yeah.
Well, my man, we'll be seeing you out there Saturday at Mountain America Stadium. And, of course, we'll be seeing you out there every time the Devils take the court at Desert Financial Arena this season. KD, my brother, truly appreciate you coming on board once again. And we'll definitely be catching up very soon down the road. Maybe I'll have to clock in for my bodyguard duties on Saturday. I got no problem with that. We'll put the weightlifting to use.
Let's go. And the thing is, like I told somebody yesterday, I'm like, it's we don't have a lot of these moments. It's a great time to be a Sun Devil, so let's be Sun Devils right now. Let's celebrate with each other, with the true Sun Devils, you, Brad, like all our people, like let's enjoy this time right now. It's a great time to be a Sun Devil. Enjoy basketball, enjoy football, volleyball, freaking hockey. Let's go. Let's do it.
Amen, my friend. All right, my brother. Until next time.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our illustrious and lengthy guest list for this episode: Jordan Crook, Kyson Brown, Mitch Harper, Kyle Dodd, and Tristan Bacon. This week's game will kick off under the Tempe sun, 1:30 p.m. If you're not able to get out there or you're out of state, the ESPN national game. A lot of eyes are going to be on this ranked matchup. So a lot of good stuff going on. We'll have some more stuff coming up to the rest of this weekend all the time. So make sure you stay with us on the social media side of things. You can follow us on Twitter at SOTD Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky now at Speak of the Devils. Follow us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, and give me a follow on all things social at BDenny29.
Get us on Threads, get us on MySpace, get an AOL chat room going. Just get involved, folks, and you can follow me on all them things at Joe Healy 42.
All right, so once you're done supporting our amazing list of sponsors, make sure you drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. We will be back next week to look back at what happened in this clash of the Big 12 Titans and turn the page to Hate Week.